red light on. It's on. Good morning, good morning. Happy Tuesday, June 13th, 2020. Good morning again. We just started recording. Happy Tuesday, everybody. It's now the 9 o'clock hour, the hour for our joint city county committee meeting. We're here on the second floor in City Hall chambers this morning, and I greet everyone who's joined us here in person, as well as those who will join us remotely. We have a couple of excused absences. I don't think we have a quorum as of now, but we'll go ahead and call the roll and we'll get started. I want to take a moment of personal privilege to county commissioners a happy birthday today. Everybody wish all right, if you will call our roll.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chair Brenda Howerton. Here. Vice Chair Wendy Jacobs. Here. Commissioner Nita Alam. Here. And Commissioner Heidi Carter. Will she be attending? Right, sure. Okay, and on the city side, Mayor O'Neill.
I have heard word from Councilwoman Johnson, Councilwoman Freeman, and Councilwoman Rosie Hyman. They will not be here today. I think all of them have work obligations this morning. So we will probably not have a quorum on the city side, as I think I might be the only one in the city this morning, which is fine. But so we'll go ahead and have our presentations, but we will not be able to take a vote on the excuse absences for our minutes. So let's go right into, we have a fairly full agenda today. And so we want to go right into our item number 2, which is the comprehensive plan update. And we will ask those persons to come forward at this time.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Carl Kolosna, and I'm a senior planner in Durham City County Planning Department. I'm here to share information on the draft Durham Comprehensive Plan. So today I'm going to give some brief background on the plan, and then I'm going to jump into our main item for discussion, which is the place type map, and that includes the urban growth boundary and future growth areas. Make sure, yeah. Okay. I'm all mic'd up appropriately. Thank you. Like I said, our main discussion today will be the urban growth boundary and the future growth area, which I'm going to explain in more detail soon. So we're seeking guidance on the full plan before it comes in front of a joint session of the county commissioners and city council on August 31st. And that includes specific decision points related to potential revisions to the map from the January 2023 published draft that we've released. As we've been working on this project since 2019, there are a lot of pieces that I won't have time to discuss today. In the agenda, we shared the full memo and attachments for the JCC PC discussion, which includes a lot of those background details. But again, today I'm going to focus on a few key discussion points that are looking like the most controversial elements of the plan. So your guidance today will help us put forward a final draft for your review as we head towards the joint session between the city and county in late August to consider adoption of the plan. So we began this work in 2019 and have worked throughout the plan's development to undertake equitable engagement following the equitable community engagement blueprint. This has been a learning process as we found what works for residents and where we need to improve. For example, we've provided stipends to residents as they helped lead and design engagement at different points. We brought residents into policy drafting processes through our policy working groups, and we improved our transparency and accountability to the community at each step of the process by showing what we've heard and how the plan content drafts have changed as a result. We're now in the adoption process for the plan. We continue to share resident feedback that arises in the process with you, our elected officials, and with the Planning Commission, whose final hearing on the plan is now scheduled for this evening. So this slide lists some of the key ways that this new plan is different from the 2005 plan. As we've worked towards more equitable engagement, that's had an impact on what this plan includes, particularly when compared to our last plan. So I want to highlight this first item because it's relevant to the discussion point we have today, which says focuses more growth within the existing city footprint. This plan focuses on encouraging development to fill in within our existing city footprint, where connections to water, sewer, and other transportation infrastructure already exist. And this approach allows us to protect some of the more insensitive environmental lands and rural character in parts of the county. So after a long process that started in 2019, we have the full plan pulled together, which was released in January of this year. And I just want to briefly mention each of the components that are included in the plan. So the first is the community goals and objectives and the accompanying guiding values. And these were adopted both by the city and the county in the summer of 2021, and they have guided the rest of the work to create this plan. We also have a growth management strategy that includes the characteristics of a 15-minute community and the growth management tools of the urban growth boundary and the future growth area, which I'll go into in a minute. We have 10 different topics that the policies and actions are organized under. And for each of these topics, we've grouped policy recommendations by subtopics for easier navigation. And each topic of policies is followed by a list of actions that could help us implement those policies. We have the full list of place types and their descriptions organized by broad use categories. And this is the key to understanding the place type map, which is our new future land use map, which is also included in the section. And finally, we have the implementation section of the plan, which lays out the ways that we can work towards implementation, both specifically for planning staff, but also across our city and county departments, how we'll track progress towards the plan's goals, and ways to continue transparency and accountability efforts to the community. All of the actions included in the plan document are organized into a separate implementation list, and that includes primary responsible parties for leading that work. Planning staff will be working with city and county staff to further develop the implementation list, including prioritizing these actions and determining how to approach interdepartmental collaboration efforts as needed. So that's our background on the plan. This is our main discussion point today and what we as staff are looking for feedback on. There are a couple of terms and concepts related to the urban growth boundary discussion that we wanted to explain before we jump into some specific geographic areas. And first, that's the urban growth boundary, and we've also may have heard of is the suburban development tier. So the suburban tier is a line that was established in the 2005 comprehensive plan. That's our old plan that we're currently under right now. The concept behind the suburban tier is functionally very similar to the proposed urban growth boundary, which is that both of them are a line beyond which the city should not extend city services, and particularly important for land use development, should not extend water and sewer services beyond that line. So the suburban tier and the proposed urban growth boundary are essentially interchangeable in terms of what they mean as concepts. The suburban tier is what's already adopted the old plan. The urban growth boundary is what is being proposed in the new comprehensive plan. So our main discussion points today are about where the urban growth boundary line should be in the new plan. So since 2005, when the suburban tier was established, many areas on the edge of the city that were within the suburban tier have been annexed into the city, and new development has occurred there, particularly in the southeast portion of Durham. That development is in line with what the 2005 comprehensive plan envisions, and it shows how much of an impact an urban growth boundary can make on our land use distributions. So this map that I'm showing here shows the proposed urban growth boundary in a dark brown outline. That's the sort of edgings that you see right here. What I also want to talk about today, and the sort of key of this discussion, is looking county-wide. So the parcels shown in blue on this map are the parcels that are currently in the suburban tier under the old plan, but which staff has recommended via the draft plan to be removed from the new urban growth boundary. So there are about 660 parcels in total shown in blue here. They total an area of a little under 7,000 acres, or about 10.8 square miles. And for reference, the total area of Durham County is about 298 square miles. So this area proposed for removal from the urban growth boundary represents about 3.6 of the total land area of Durham County. So the first version of this place type map, which included a draft urban growth boundary, was shared in 2021, and it went through an initial phase of community engagement. Staff then revised the map in response to community input and included what you now see in the full plan document that was shared in January, and that's what's the version that's online now and in the JCC PC attachments. So an initial letter through the mail was sent out to each of these 660 property owners on February 14th of this year, notifying them of the proposed change. And then a follow-up letter was sent out on March 15th, addressing some of the frequent questions that staff had received in response to the first letter that we sent out. So prompted by these letters, staff heard from a number of property owners out of the 666 or 660 who are requesting that their property or properties, which are currently in the suburban tier in the old plan proposed for removal, essentially be added back into the urban growth boundary. So they're requesting to be added into the urban growth boundary, would allow city services, including water and sewer connections. So today we're going to share the details of some key areas where we've received requests from property owners to be added back into the urban growth boundary. And what we're looking for today is to get a better idea of the direction from both the city and county elected officials on the requested changes, as agreement both on this between both the city and county elected officials is going to be needed to approve a final version of the plan and a final version of the map following the August 31st public hearing. So we're going to go through these discussion points one by one, sharing an overview of the issues and stopping to discuss each area of potential change to ask for your feedback and direction. And we'll share what staff included in the January full plan document and what feedback we've heard. And then the planning commission did a sort of straw poll on each of these areas about whether to make the change. So we're focusing on conversations on these areas because these are the issues that we think you are most likely to hear about from residents leading up to and at these joint hearings. So as we go through these, if there are any aspects of the discussion points that you'd like to flag for additional information for staff to compile prior to the joint hearing, please let us know. That would be really helpful. So the map here is showing the location of the areas that we're going to talk about in the context of the full county. So as we go through each of the following areas, again, we're going to show a larger view of the county with context, and we'll show a side-by-side of the map as proposed by staff with the full draft version in January on the left, and then a map showing the requested changes to the map on the right. And for each area where a change in the urban growth boundary occurs, we need to reassess the appropriate place type for these properties. And that's because the place types that are not appropriate outside the urban growth boundary are very limited, since we don't anticipate extending city infrastructure and support to these areas. So for properties within the urban growth boundary, we want to ensure that place type designations will work for us. We're working towards the 15-minute community characteristics. So the January map proposed retraction from that suburban tier boundary in order to help focus growth within the existing city footprint, and because our calculations shows that the anticipated population growth over the next few decades could be more than accommodated within the proposed place types mapped out, even with this reduction of the urban growth boundary. So I'm going to pause here for a moment because I know this is a lot of information. The first time we've brought an item before this board, to see if there are any general questions about this concept before we sort of jump into the individual map areas, which I have 5 of. I'll pause here if folks have any questions or if I need to go over again any of these concepts.
Thank you, Carl. Some of us are on Joint City Towns Planning Committee, so we've had the benefit of this information. I think it's important to note the last comment that you made, which is that with the recommended urban growth area that the staff has recommended to us, they have assessed that we will need by 2050, is that correct? Mm-hmm. About 60,000 new housing units. And with the plan that staff recommends, it's estimated that we would have enough for 150,000 housing units. In other words, there is with, and that's, I want to qualify with the policies that are in the new comprehensive land use plan, which is around denser development, more walkable neighborhoods, things like that, more infill development. So I just think it's important to talk about, those numbers. I also want to note that this doesn't include the projections for the new planning that the RTP is going to be doing. They're really looking at re-envisioning land within the Research Triangle Park to be more dense, similar to what we're doing at the hub. And some of their estimates are that they could have 40,000 people living in RTP and that. So that doesn't include even that. So I just wanted to give that context that some of us have from the Joint City County Planning Committee.
Thank you for that. I guess for me, I have probably a real elementary question, and that is, why were these areas, these specific areas chosen?
Yeah.
To come out of the new plan? And now you have the neighbors asking that they be put back in the plan. If you could kind of explain why they were chosen and why now they want to, those neighbors have indicated that they want back in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll talk about the individuals for each specific property,
Right.
but essentially the reason overall for it is because of complexity and difficulty in extending or upgrading water and sewer services that are in these properties. These properties are on the edge fringes of our city, and in most circumstances, they're either very far away from the appropriate water and sewer infrastructure, or the water and sewer infrastructure that is there right now is basically at capacity. So I'll also say a number of these properties are essentially not really appropriate for development. I've calculated about 40% of them are things like U.S. Army Corps of Engineer land that is floodway land, or land that's owned by entities like the state of North Carolina, the Eno River Association, the Ellerby Creek Watershed Association, conservation groups. That's not all of them, but a decent portion of this land really is not appropriate for development because of environmental constraints. And then again, I'll be able to get into the details of the water and sewer infrastructure, but I think water and sewer and to some degrees, the ability for fire service to be provided. Scott Whiteman here can also answer any detailed questions about specifically water and sewer issues for each of the sites. Okay, that was a great question. Thank you. So if there aren't any other questions, I'm going to get into our areas. So this is a context map. The first area is in the Stagville and Oxford Road area that you can see circled on the map here. These properties are part of the Trayburn Master Plan, parts of which date back to the mid-1980s and are currently in the suburban tier. Trayburn has been built out at a lower intensity than originally envisioned, and some developer committed upgrades to the sewer system were never completed. So this is our first map, and this will be a similar format for each of the areas. So on the left side, you'll see what staff's recommendation from the January full plan draft is, which has the pole to the urban growth boundary in from where the suburban tier has been drawn. And these properties have been designated as rural and agricultural reserve, shown in green. So I just want to highlight them with my mouse because I know it's going to be a little difficult to see. We're talking about this property here, which is outlined in the black and white, and also this property here. So you can see they are green on this map because they're outside of the urban growth boundary. If a change was made and they were added into the urban growth boundary, staff is recommending that they would be given a mixed use neighborhood place type and that a new future growth area would be added. So let me go through here. So staff recommended removing these properties from the urban growth boundary because of the sewer limitations, and there's not currently adequate fire coverage. In addition, the majority of the properties on the east side of Old Oxford Road is in the Falls Lake critical area, which is a watershed protection overlay. That's that blue line that you can kind of see bisecting the property here. So part of it is inside that critical area, which is a zoning overlay district that has additional restrictions because of the environmental considerations. So in response to the January draft, staff heard residents and representatives of the property owner speak in favor of properties in this area being added back into the urban growth boundary. Staff also heard residents who had concerns about the future growth area, critical watershed protection overlay within the proposed areas. So the Planning Commission took a poll on this issue. 4 of the members of the Planning Commission were in favor of keeping these properties outside of the urban growth boundary, while 7 members were in favor of changing the map to include these properties inside the urban growth boundary. As I mentioned, if these properties were added back into the urban growth boundary, we would recommend a mixed-use neighborhood place type and designate the area a new future growth area because of these existing sewer and fire service limitations. So the map on the right shows the changes in the place type. So that's sort of our overview of our first process. I know Commissioner Jacobs, you've seen this before, but we're not asking for a straw poll, and I know with quorum we can't do that. We're really just sort of gauging any questions. If anybody's willing to say they're leaning one direction or another, or if there's more information we can provide, we're happy to do that.
Commissioner Long.
I had a question around the terminology of mixed use neighborhood, and this may be a very elementary question with a very detailed response of just what is the definition of like a mixed use neighborhood place type within the scope of like, do we have requirements around how dense the units are in this area? What type of mixed use capabilities are there?
Yeah, definitely. So what the map for each of our place types has what's called a place type description, which is a fairly detailed review of what should be in each place type. It's not like the zoning. It's different from the zoning map where it's not actually assigning properties, but essentially mixed use neighborhood. Not only do we want to see a variety and diversity and relatively high density of residential units, but that also incorporates like commercial and retail, and maybe even, especially for Trayburn, could be, you know, biomedical or technology or things like that. So it's we're really envisioning it as a mixed use, you know, both residential and commercial place type, where there would be a lot of opportunities for people to live and work and play and shop in a singular area without relying on cars. So it's sort of the key idea behind the mixed use neighborhood.
And then the second question I have around that is, as we look at, you know, future growth areas and bringing in places of expanding the urban growth boundaries, what conversations, and this obviously, like I know probably also happens organically as we start to develop in these places, but like with access to broadband and connectivity in these areas, especially when you're talking about like Stagville, Trayburn area, there are issues with signal and making sure that we're building homes there, but folks can still stay connected.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a consideration, something we've heard, particularly from our rural residents, is the concern, you know, the limitations, how slow the internet is, or whether it's provided or not. As opposed to water and sewer, which is a little bit more of a, you know, basically there's not a municipal internet service. We don't have direct control over where the internet lines go, but that's definitely been identified. And I think something that we've heard clearly from residents needs to be a part of the consideration as we're talking about where development happens.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just one, yeah, I forget to turn it on. So when you take a poll of the residents in these areas, now what particular area are you talking about now? The Stagville Road and Oxford Road?
Mhm.
So when you take a poll of the residents in those areas, are they in favor of what's occurring there?
In terms of in favor of there being a change for the map, or in favor of what's sort of
And
been-
yeah, the map means that there will be change in
Right.
the development and of housing. And I'm asking this question because of some of the emails that I've received.
Mhm.
So I'm curious as to, are you getting the pushback that I'm hearing in the emails that I'm getting?
Yeah, I think what I can say, obviously, the situation's a little bit different, but in general, the reason, so staff proposed these properties to be removed from the urban growth boundary in the January version. What prompted the bringing this question of whether or not it should be added back in was when we sent letters to all of the property owners being removed. So I would say, please, somebody from staff correct me if I'm wrong. In general, I think all of the areas here it's a request from the current property owners or some of the property owners in these areas who want to be added back into the urban growth boundary because they have plans and ideas about doing development that generally relies on water and sewer infrastructure. In general, again, I would say most of what we as staff have been hearing from residents are residents saying they want the urban growth boundary to stay as it is in the January draft. So I think that's kind of how I would characterize what the conversation is happening. We've got individual property owners who we've notified about this change, who are requesting to be added back in. And in general, I think what we've seen is residents are saying we would like to stay, with the January draft, which is these areas not being in the urban growth boundary. Yeah.
When you say in general, when, if you equate it to, you sent out 660 letters.
Yeah.
And what percentage of that, when you say in general, what does that mean?
So we sent out the letters to 660 property owners. We're talking about 9 or 10 areas here. Each of them have a number of properties in them, but it's trying to think exactly what the numbers is. It's not a large percentage of the property owners who we notified. These are a key sort of amount. I'm not sure if there's anybody from staff who has, I'm sort of struggling to characterize what our descriptions are here. Yeah.
Morning, I'm Scott Whiteman for the planning department. I think it's fair to say that most of the folks that we've heard from who want to remain within the urban growth boundary are the folks who own larger properties who would like to, who had current or future plans to develop them. So those are the ones. And like Carl said, we're hearing from a lot of folks who, smaller property owners or homeowners who live in or nearby these areas, that they would prefer that they remain rural.
So it sounds like you've got the larger property owners versus the smaller property owners. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
don't want to overgeneralize, but
Yeah. But
yeah,
that's
that's
what
a
I'm
fair way to
hearing.
say it. Yeah, that's a fair way.
Yeah, that's a shame that, because it negates the smaller property owners and their interest. Yeah. Thank you.
So if there aren't any more questions on this one, I can move on to our next area. So the next area.
At some point,
Yeah.
so I think one of the clarifying points for me would be sort of costs, what we're talking about when you're talking about, and it just generalization so that people know, it's what we're hearing is the larger property owners would like to be able to have access to the city services. Yeah, it's not going to cause of their development. Smaller may not be so because they're not really going to develop. So then it becomes, when you start to provide these kinds of services, that the city has to cost that out. And I'm sure you all have probably done that. And maybe part of that's why we're being pulled back, because I think I've heard you say environmental concerns, also just access to not only the services, but basic infrastructure that you need. And that sounds like a cost to the city. So there has to be that balancing act, and I would want you to kind of flesh that out a little bit, just an overall picture. And if you have that, what does that look like? Because I'm sure that money, the dollar figure is a game changer when you talk about that. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Well, I just want to respond because I can give you a very concrete example. One of the sites that's going to come up is Snow Hill, which is in the Trayburn area. The city has a pump station to Snow Hill that is at capacity. And we have property owners, businesses, major employers in Trayburn who need water capacity to expand. Great jobs. You all have not been able, have not had the ability to pay for that. So the county, we are spending $30 million on your pump station. because it's a desperate situation. And so that's a very concrete example right there of the kind of situation. I really want to, I mean, I was going to hold my comments, but I want to just applaud the staff because this is really important, as you said, Mayor. You know, that's $30 million we could have spent on something else. We have plenty of other things that we could spend the money on in the county. So these are choices that we have to make. You know, all of that, the original picture, they're all areas on the fringe. And the reason that they haven't been developed is because they're environmentally sensitive. They will have an environmental impact. A lot of them is Falls Lake watershed, and also because it's expensive. And so we have to make choices about where we put our public resources.
Thank you for that. I kind of figured that may be the reason, the real underlying reason. Well, one of the primary reasons why our staff is requesting that, because the cost will probably be more prohibitive than the city could reasonably manage even between now and 2050. So I just, you know, I don't think that you all are making these decisions in isolation of that or other reasons. Then I just want the public to understand that primarily, I think a big part of this is going to be cost to keep these properties in. Is that, would that be a correct assumption?
Yes, I would agree with that. The cost of extending or upgrading the water and sewer utilities especially can be enormous. And that's in contrast to the status quo right now, which is that these services are not being extended to these properties, that they're undeveloped right now, that they're generally not in the city.
And all of that cost, if we were to bring these properties back in, would lie at the foot of the city and not necessarily at individual property owners.
And the county.
And the county. Right, it would be both the governments rather than property owners that would have to incur that. Would that also be kind of correct?
Madam Mayor, that is, a lot of the time when new development happens, it's on the developer to build the sewer and water infrastructure. So that cost is typically borne by the developer, and then usually passed on to the future home buyers. It's just if they're going to be connecting to the existing system, and so if it's already in the public system, there may be, like Commissioner Jacobs was talking about, there may be upgrades to the existing system that someone will have to pay for, and usually that falls in the city or county, although we can get developers paid for that as well.
Thank you. Just want to add the money conversation.
It's always about the money.
It's always-
It's always about the money.
You may proceed.
All right, thank you. So this next area is in the Farrington Mill Road area, and you can see circled on the map. These properties are a little special in that there's an active zoning and annexation request for these areas, 2 cases, which have been called Sheffield Farms in the application. These were submitted after the draft urban growth boundary was published. So again, on the left side of the slide in sort of black and white outline, you'll see staff's recommendation, which is being to pull these properties out of the urban growth boundary. And they've been designated as rural and agricultural reserve, and also recreation and open space, which are shown in the green colors here. Staff recommended removing these properties from the urban growth boundary because of the complexity of serving this area with city sewer. The topography of this area is such that any sewer extensions would require pumping sewage uphill at multiple locations through existing city lift stations. And several of those lift stations are at capacity, and there are no current plans for upgrading them. So in response to the January map, staff heard property owners speak in favor of these properties to be added back to the urban growth boundary. That's shown on the right here. So staff would recommend, I'm sorry. So the planning commission took a poll on this issue, and 8 of the members were in favor of keeping these properties outside of the UGB, while 3 members were in favor of changing the map to include these properties inside the urban growth boundary. So again, if these properties were added back into the urban growth boundary, staff would recommend the mixed use neighborhood and mixed residential neighborhood place types and designations, and also designating a new future growth area based on the sewer and fire service limitations. So the map on the right shows the changes in the place type for these recommended properties. So again, like the last one, I'll pause here if there are any specific questions about this area in particular. If not, I can move on to the next one. Sure. So this next area is the Patterson Road area. You can see circles here. So again, on the left, you've got staff's recommendations from the January plan, which is pulled out the urban growth boundary. I'll just sort of highlight it. It's the kind of the tip of this triangle shape here. So a number of properties in this area right here. So the staff recommended removing these properties from the urban growth boundary because a new lift station would need to be constructed to serve these areas with city sewer. However, the size and the limited, due to the size and the limited number of properties, it's possible that a lift station could be constructed by a private developer to serve this entire area without city participation. So in response to the January map, staff heard property owners speak in favor of these properties in this area being added back to the urban growth boundaries. Staff also heard from residents who had concerns about these properties being added back into the urban growth boundary, including receiving a petition from over 450 residents who would like to see these Patterson Road properties remain outside of the urban growth boundary. So the Planning Commission took a poll on this issue and 6 of the members were in UGB, while 5 members were in favor of changing the map to include these properties inside the area. And again, these properties, if these properties were added back into the urban growth boundary, staff would recommend that the mixed use neighborhood and the mixed residential neighborhood place type be designated. And the map on the right shows the changes in the place types, which would be recommended if these properties were within the urban growth boundary. So again, I'll stop if there are any specific questions about this property. Okay, if there are none, I'll go on to the next. So this is the Cheekwood and, Cheek Road and Redwood area. You can see circled on the map here, and these properties are currently in the suburban tier. So I'll sort of highlight these again in the black and white. This area here. So on the left side of the slide, you'll see staff's recommendations from the January draft, which is pulled the urban growth boundary for these properties not to be in the urban growth boundary and has a designated rural and agricultural reserve. So staff recommended removing these properties from the urban growth boundary because a new sewer lift station would need to be constructed to serve this area with city sewer because of the large size and the number of properties in this basin. A privately built lift station designed to serve the area is not likely. And in addition, city sewer in this area would most likely need to be pumped to an existing city lift station that's already at capacity. And there's also not adequate coverage in terms of fire response. So in response to the January map, staff heard from property owners speak in favor of these properties being added back into the urban growth boundary. Staff also heard similarly from residents concerned about these properties being added back into the urban growth boundary, including receiving a petition from over 450 residents who would like to see these properties remain outside of the urban growth boundary. Planning Commission took a poll on this issue. 5 members were in favor of keeping these properties outside of the urban growth area, while 6 members were in favor of changing the map to include these properties inside the urban growth boundary. And if added back into the urban growth boundary, staff would recommend a mix of the established residential and the mixed use place types, and also designating the area as a new future growth area based on the existing concerns about sewer and fire service. So again, I'll pause here if there's any discussion or questions for this one.
Yeah, I just want to share some of the additional discussion that we had in particular about at the Joint City County Planning Committee about this area is where there currently is a lot of farming happening. And, we had a conversation about the importance of also protecting our soils and some of our key agricultural land, because it's frankly, Durham County is not very big. And we have lost a lot of our potential farmland and preserving farm, having a strong local food system is something that we are investing very heavily in Durham County. We have a very active program supporting small farmers with grants. We are doing a study on a farm campus. We try to support our local food system with different departments, and we also very actively provide conservation easements for farmers so that they can, still have some wealth from their land, and be able to keep farming and keep their land and their families. So again, I just wanted to bring that up because we did have a very big conversation about this site in particular related to that. Being of value to the entire Durham community.
All right, and I just wanted to do a time check. I just have 2 more areas and I'll get through them very quickly if that's all right. Thank you. So the next area is in Hamlin Road. You can see circled on the map here. These requests came after the Planning Commission discussed most of these changes. This request came after the Planning Commission discussed it. So the Planning Commission did not do a straw poll on this one. They may be discussing it tonight, but we just wanted to share this one. So these properties are located at 2503 and 2523 Hamlin Road. They're both within the Falls Lake District, the FJA critical watershed, and the development regulations, the FJA regulations would limit development on the properties to 1 acre lots with 6 to 9% impervious surface for the coverage. So if added back into the urban growth boundary, staff would recommend the mixed residential neighborhood place type designation, and also to include these in a future growth area. So the map on the right shows, again, these are relatively small parcels compared to the ones that we've shown before, and we got a request. We'll be sure to include the acreage information for each of these in the future. So the map on the left shows staff's recommendation, which is that these 2 parcels be outside of the urban growth boundary, and the map on the right showing that orange color, designating them the mixed residential neighborhood place type and being within the urban growth boundary. So I'll stop on that one unless there's anything. Okay, this last one is a little bit different from what we've discussed. It's not related to the urban growth boundary, but rather a change to the boundary of the future growth areas, which you can see on the map here. It's this sort of cross-hatched, it's kind of dark color here. So these future growth areas work alongside the urban growth boundary. Future growth areas could become the next place to see development activity and are generally founded on the fringes of the city limits. So shown in this sort of red highlighted with a crosshatch. Future growth areas are parts of Durham within the urban growth boundary that are currently underdeveloped or sparsely developed and that need critical infrastructure upgrades like the ones we've been talking about today, water, sewer, fire service, to serve new development. So as a reminder, all of the future growth areas are within the growth boundary. So any change that's proposed here wouldn't require a place type designation. So on the left side of the slide, you'll see the boundary of the southeast future growth area as included in the January draft. So the staff recommendation for this area is to remove the northwest portion of the southeast future growth area. That's this little section right here. So in the current draft, these properties are included in the future growth area. Staff's recommendation would be to reduce the future growth area size by taking these parcels out. And so in the January draft, the entire area east of Kemp Road and Virgil was included in the future growth area in the draft Southeast Durham focus area due to city fire service limitations. But since that time, the Durham Fire Department has determined that the area that I just noted, which includes the Kemp Road residential site, can be served with adequate fire response time without an additional station. So staff has heard requests from property owners and members of the development community to remove the future growth area designation entirely. Staff has also heard from many residents who would like to see the southeast future growth area retained, including receiving a petition from over 450 residents who would like to see the area remain inside the southeast future growth area. So planning commission took a poll on this issue. 2 of them were in favor of keeping these properties inside the future growth area, and 8 were in favor of retracting the northwest corner of the future growth area, which is what staff is now recommending. There was a 1 abstention from that as well. So again, this is a little bit different, but I'll pause here again for this discussion. This is one of the few ones where staff is sort of proactively recommending a change to the future growth area because of the new information that the city fire department provided. Okay. All right. All right, well, thank you for bearing with me. I know there's a lot of information, very detailed, very quickly. I just want to quickly go over what's next. So the final hearing before the planning commission is scheduled for this evening, actually, where the planning commission is going to, we anticipate receiving the recommendations in 2 parts. One, they're going to vote on the main contents of the plan, and one which will be, on the main contents of the map, and one which will be the remainder of the plan. So following that hearing, we're going to prepare an informational agenda items for the Board of County Commissioners August 7th work session and the City Council August 10th work session. And that'll be to provide a preview of these materials for consideration of the joint hearing and to create another opportunity for elected officials to familiarize themselves with, ask questions on, and discuss the plan. And then, so we have scheduled the joint Board of County Commissioners and City Council public hearing on the comprehensive plan for August 31st at 7 p.m. in the council chambers. And we anticipate that this will be the final public comment opportunity on the plan before each board considers adoption of the plan at subsequent regular sessions. So yeah, that concludes my presentation for today.
Thank you so much. Just a couple of logistical questions. When was the last Durham comprehensive plan? When was the last?
The last one was adopted in 2005.
Okay, and when would the next one, after this one is adopted in 2023? When would the next one start that process? Will it adopt that next one?
Madam Mayor, there's no particular requirement for when a comprehensive plan has to be updated. And some of our neighboring states require you to do it every 5 years, but North Carolina does not. I think in this plan, we've included a mechanism to do kind of a comprehensive assessment and update every 2 years. And I think through that, we can figure out when the comprehensive plan itself has become too outdated for what's happening in our community. I think in general, a rule of thumb is every 10 years, you should look at them really carefully and do a major update. But some of that depends on how quickly your community is changing,
Which is my concern. If we hadn't done one since 2005, we're now in 2023, and we know just within the last 3 or 4 years, we have had rapid growth all over the city, but particularly in some areas that I visited this weekend in Southeast Durham, where the development is phenomenal, and you can kind of see the environmental impacts it's having on that land out there. So I just wanted to know, how often we look at that, because it's moving, it's not static. This is ever changing, and in our case in Durham City and County, rapidly. Commissioner Jacobs.
Thank you. Yes, I was on the planning commission in 2005 when we adopted the comprehensive land use plan. At that time, it was supposed to last for about 10 to 15 years. And also, you can remember, we started the process of creating this plan before the pandemic. We started in 2019, and now it's 2023. And, part of it is we have had a very deeply engaged process. Thank you to I see Lisa Miller over there and a lot of the staff who's worked really, really hard on having a very authentic, equitable process, and it takes time. And then we had the pandemic. But one thing I will say is that I feel like we have a really, really good plan. I hope people will take time to read the plan, read the goals and the values that I think there's something for us to really build on for the long term. The map And then also what would come next is revising our ordinances. But we have to stay committed to it. So the urban growth area is really important because we have to say, okay, we're holding the line here. And that means we also are saying to the community that we're going to focus our infrastructure, our investments on, you know, what is within the urban growth area and try to create what people in our community want. I just want to say, I know, Carl, you started out asking, you know, for just if people want to state, and I'll just say for the record that I support all of the staff recommendations on all of these different issues. So thank you.
Go ahead, Chair.
I just want to say, given how long that Chair Jacobs just said it took from the time he started to get here, by the time we adopt this, it sounds like we'll need to start planning for the next one. I know that sounds like a lot of work for staff, but given, if you think about the length of time that it takes to get it done and how Durham's growing, it sounds like we'll have to start right away with planning. When will the next one be?
Yeah, and one thing I'll say is, I didn't have a lot of time to talk about it here. A lot of the plans, the actions and the implementation of the plan talk about special projects or assessments or initiatives or analysis that staff needs to be doing that is going to will be continuing to refine on the work that's been identified in the plan. But I agree, it's taken a while and things are changing.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all so much. I did want to know, and thank you, staff, for a fine job. I think this is the really kind of notes of both who we are as a city and county. So this kind of work is done diligently and a lot of times out of the public eye, and it's so important. So we appreciate all of the time that you all have put into this. And I think our clerk indicated there may be a couple of people in the audience who wanted to speak to us today about that. And there is a sign-up sheet at the podium. So desire. I will, because we have such a full agenda, we will ask that you limit your comments to 2 minutes. And then we will come back and close up with this agenda item. If there are persons that would like to speak with us. Nobody's moving. Okay, all right. Yeah, it's up at the podium. So we'll try to.
I want you to know that I'm totally unprepared for this. So I'll jot a few comments down. I'm Rebecca Freeman, 1818 Southview Road, and thank you for taking these comments this morning. I appreciate the work that the planners have done. They have diligently worked very hard on this, and I understand that. But I do want to recognize a couple of things. The first public hearing that the Planning Commission had was on February 28th. That's the very first one. They had 2 comments from, they said they were residents, but they were developers. Okay, they were developers. So there were not any residents there to speak up because we thought that everything was like it was planned. And we didn't realize that there was going to be so much comment coming back. Well, from those 2 separate residents that are developers that spoke, they said they changed their recommendation on February 28th. After that hearing, the planners changed the recommendation for the areas that they had specified, particularly with Patterson and Sheik Road and the future growth areas. Then the straw poll was taken at that time. We've had a lot of engagement. They cut off their engagement March 20th. The petitions came in way after that, and they trickled in, the 160 petitions and letters. And we feel like in our areas, we were not well represented in the rural areas because it was admitted by the planners who have done a really good job in their assessments of people who were contacted. They admitted that they did not have the good contacts in the rural areas because there were no city services, we had water bills or anything. So many of us in the rural areas didn't even know about everything that was going on until we saw the bulldozers pull in and the blasting start. And that's when we started getting engaged and finding out what was happening in our areas. And so then it's been a struggle since then to have anybody to listen to anything because it's been so aggressive. They're I can't tell you, I didn't bring it with me this morning, but the number of developments that have already been approved and are pending that have never been constructed yet. There are, I'm sorry, I don't have this, statistics with me this morning, but there's over 16,000 homes, is my understanding, in the dwelling units in our area already. They're not even constructed, not even counting the ones that are already constructed. So I am concerned that we're not being listened to. There's no equity for us. We're in the rural areas. We have a very diverse population, all wealth levels, all race areas, types of homes, and already we have trailers, we have larger homes, we have mid-sized homes, we have gardens and all these kinds of things, and we're not being listened to. And so I appreciate the work they've done in the areas that they've been able to reach. But in the Southeast Focus Area study, they admitted that they had difficulty getting to rural areas, and they had people from 27703, which is that area that we represent in our area. But we don't even know if those ones that were 27703 were in the city or the county. It's a mix there. So I appreciate your listening to my comments. I feel like they're disappointed. But thank you very much for the work you do.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, audience, panel. My name is Thomas Freeman. I live at 1818 Southview Road, Durham, North Carolina. And for the record, I'm a Durham native. Been here 70 years. 70 years, I have asked very, very little from my government. I live in the county. We're independent. We're resourceful. We really don't need a lot. But let me draw your attention to one thing. I'd like to draw your attention to the development in Southeast Durham County. It doesn't have to look like that. Did you hear me? It doesn't have to look like that. I'd also draw your attention to this thing called a conservation subdivision. Oh my gracious. Go out to NC 98 and Kent Road, take a look at Triple Crown. If you see any conservation activities out there, I will buy you lunch. That site is an eroding clump of Triassic Basin soil. Where's it going? Where's it going? It's going to Lick Creek. Lick Creek goes to Falls Lake. Neighbors in Raleigh have to drink that water. The creek is dead. It's covered in mud. There are no minnows, there are no crawfish. There's no plant life. It's all dead. Where did it come from? Came from the upstream development. The upstream development in Southeast Durham County. And Searles is the reason. Make no doubt about it. Searles is the reason. And I would suggest that when that was approved, the government leaders at that time did not look at the secondary consequences of all of the massive development in Southeast Durham. They wanted that revenue. They wanted those builders to be able to do their thing. They approved it. There it sits. There goes the mud in the Falls Lake, killing it. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I wasn't planning on it.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Like I said, I wasn't planning on speaking today. I was just planning on listening. But I do want to bring to, my name is Pam Williams. I live in Southeast Durham. I've lived there most of my entire life, 5 years in Alabama and 1 year in Saudi Arabia. I'm an engineer. I've done land development. I've done transportation as my main field. The way they are grading and developing land out in Southeast Durham is just horrible. We beg you to go out there and see. There is behind people's houses, not 50 feet from there or 75 feet from the back door, there's a 20-foot drop because they want to flatten all the land And so they can build townhomes at the most economical way they can on flat land. So they're taking down 20 feet over here and adding it over there to the other side and a conservation. My thing is, why do we need to expand the urban growth boundary? We, per the plan, 2050, we only need 60,000 homes projected. That's the way the future land use plan is laid out for 60,000 homes. But the future land growth boundary as it's laid out will provide 150, but we only need 60,000. Okay, so why are we increasing the density so high out here in these urban areas that we have so much erosion problems that are failing and we can't control it? Let's give us time to get these ordinances in place to control the sediment, the nutrients that are going into our land, going into our streams, and taking away the habitat for the animals and even for us. You know, why do we have to go in and change the plume every time from 2 dwellings per acre to 6 dwellings per acre, like they're doing on Sagebrook, this proposed tonight? But that's just one case. It's every single, there's 5 tonight at the planning. Every single one of them is increasing the zoning by 2 to 3 times. Why are we doing this if we don't need it? And if the planning department, which has done a lot of work in the last several years, says, hey, we don't need to increase this because we're going to have plenty. We can provide for 150,000 by 2050, and we only need 60,000. Plus RTP is proposing another 40,000 units, it's my understanding, out at RTP. So I just would like you to really consider adding anything else into the urban growth boundary, including the future growth area, taking that, because the only people that wants that future growth area put in is developers. Thank you.
Thank you all for your comments this morning. On Sunday afternoon, I had the opportunity to spend some time actually on Falls Lake. Was there another person? Please come forward. Please come forward. And anyone else? And Commissioner Burns, you are free to join us up here. That's all right. That's okay. Please come and join us if you can. You're fine. Come on. Come on. Take your feet at the table. Thank you for coming this morning. All right, if you would just state your name and you may proceed.
Thank you. My name is Milana Paul. I also was not planning to speak today, but I did want to echo sentiments that you had, Commissioner Jacobs, on really the quality of the plan that's been presented and involved both the staff and community input here. And there is one policy in particular that outlines the considerations of the UGB extension, which I feel like is important to bring up in every one of these conversations. And I'll just read it here. Policy 166 is proposed changes to the urban growth boundary should only be made when the proponent can demonstrate all 3 of the following. The change does not expand further into critical watershed. The change does not significantly increase that long-term infrastructure maintenance for the cost of the city or county. And the change would address a clear need for the community based on adopted comprehensive plan policies. And it's a little bit of a conundrum considering the plan when the plan is not yet finalized. But I think the more we reference the policies and goals and objectives of it in each one of these decisions that go forward, really continue to increase its value to the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other speakers on this agenda item? I'd just like to close by saying I did have the opportunity to visit Falls Lake over the weekend, and I was able to see some of the neighbors who are being affected by their development out there in those areas, and I was able to see the, I think probably 50-foot drop off 25 to 30 foot drop off that some of these neighbors are experiencing as this growth happens. And a lot of these neighbors have been in those areas for 50, 60 years. I encourage all of you all that sit at this table with me and those who are not present, that before we move forward, that you take the opportunity to go out there and see it. I know for me personally, until I saw it, I didn't recognize the impact. And not only are you looking at the environmental changes, but there's also the noise that comes along with all of that. And so I just encourage you all to make sure that you go out there and see Falls Lake as it turns different colors. From what I've seen it in the past, and as you watch this landscape just being transformed before your very eyes, take a trip out there and see it. And I think that'll give you a new, greater appreciation for what's going on. So with that being said, we'll move to our third agenda item, which is a report on the youth community hackathon to prevent gun violence. And we will also have an update on prescriptions for repair pilot by co-chairs Marcia and Xavier Cason of the Safety and Wellness Taskforce co-chairs, and Dr. Kaaren Haldeman will lead us all who was a partner in the hackathon for our young people.
Good morning, Mayor O'Neill. Good morning, Commissioner Burns, Chair Howerton, and everybody here, all the Durham people who are here today. My name is Kaaren Haldeman. I'm a mother. I'm a DPS parent. And I'm a gun violence prevention activist for several decades. And on May 6th, we convened a Durham Youth Community Hackathon to prevent gun violence. This was in response to the overwhelming tragedy and trauma of the beginning of this year, and let's just be frank, for the past many years, but violence specifically experienced by our school communities. So this event, I just want to say thank you for all the support from the Community Safety and Wellness Task Force. Chairs Cason and Owens are here today. For our co-sponsors on that task force, Dr. Wanda Boone of Together for Resilient Youth, and the student representative Samuel Scarborough. So a lot of times people think, what the heck is a hackathon? What are you doing? What is it? In the sort of language of young folks and people who are in the tech industry, hacking is basically solving a problem. You hear about life hacks and all kinds of stuff on social, and this is a way to try to get to solutions for our gun violence problem from the people who were being most directly impacted, and those were our kids. I was receiving the notes from the Durham Public Schools after the tragedies occurred. I'm a parent. I'm having these conversations with my own kids. We have our own incident in our high school. There is not one high school in Durham that has not been touched by guns or gun violence. Not one. So just to give you a quick overview here too, to be really clear, this was a very student-centered event and trauma-informed. We're experiencing individual traumas around this issue, collective trauma as a school community, as a city, and those of us who work in gun violence prevention, and those of us who are affiliated or connected with people who have been impacted, the secondary trauma of those experiences. We had a great showing of our students. I wanted to quickly also say a special shout out to Durham Public Schools, who provided deep support for this event. We couldn't have done it without Dr. Kelvin Bullock, Dr. Renosa Idahor, and the cooperation of all Durham Public Schools, the administrative group, so that we could have space to do this event. The space was excellent. We went to the mini Fort Brown Staff Development Center. It had all this technology. The students were able to get up and use microphones and voice their own concerns. We had singing, we had music, and we had food. It was just, it was an event that was supposed to be fun despite the trauma of what we were dealing with. And that goes for all of us who participated. So we had about 20 students. You'll see them there. I don't know how to enlarge it right now, but please review the report if you'd like. And the photos are all in there. We had a diverse group of students from across Durham, including and also included trusted adults. These were people identified by students who they wanted to be at the table. And this is essentially a day-long brainstorming session. How do we solve the problem of gun violence? And so in the morning, we had everybody roll in. There was one young person who had come, was very sleepy. She said, I had prom last night. I had such a good time. I was out late, but it was 9 o'clock in the morning and she was there. I wanted to be here. And it was clear for all of those who participated that the students wanted to be there. So I want to jump right into what we learned because I want the students' voices to come forward. I do hope that at some point in the near future, maybe as the students kind of get through little bits of their summer, we could have a convening of the students who participated, the organizing team, and also the organizers of the other events in Durham. This is actually the third of a total of 4 events that people had organized across the city to address gun violence directly, especially student experiences. So this was the third of those events. So when we asked students in the morning, we had two lightning rounds. Those are just kind of, let's figure out what kinds of things come to mind. What kind of stories do you want to tell? What kind of experiences do you want to share? We had a lot of opportunity for students to actually tell their own story, how they were feeling. And I think many of them felt that that was actually the best part of this whole thing, was being able to talk about it. They felt that they had been silenced and just asked to just go about their day after a classmate had been killed, a classmate had been shot. And I want to acknowledge too right now, as I get rolling through here, that there are people sitting here today who are impacted by gun violence and have been impacted by gun violence and have lost their own children, their own loved ones to gun violence. And so I do want to just acknowledge you, honor you, and if any of this is re-traumatizing, please feel free to leave the room or do what you need to do to care for yourself. So we had 2 lightning rounds in the morning, tried to keep things moving. Again, the first question was, what does it mean to feel safe? This was a really interesting question. We got some lots of interesting answers. First of all, the students immediately sat down and started painting, drawing, really expressing themselves through art. And you can see some of those photos here. When we got down to business, and this was really youth-led conversations, the adults were there to write things down. They were there to help move the conversation along if they were requested. But this was really the students driving the bus. So what does it mean to feel safe? And this seems real simple, but one student said, not threatened and feeling protected. It seems so simple, but what they were telling us was they do feel threatened and they do not feel protected. And overall in the morning, the conversation was around, we need to build relationships with one another, build relationships with DPS administrators and teachers and other adults in their midst. But they were very clear they expected the adults to be responsive to what they were experiencing. And their help in helping them feel safe was one of the key features of how they would ultimately feel safe. So we brainstormed. We had lots of input from students around safety and being free. The idea of being free and feeling free. So you can see these flip charts up here. We have, maybe we can enlarge them, maybe we can't, we'll find it out in a second. But we had students also star the things at the end of the day, star the things that meant sort of the most to them, that resonated deeply with them. And as I said, we had 20 students, 19 were high schoolers. We had one middle schooler. She was one of 3 sisters who attended. We had a couple of, we had 3 sibling pairs, actually 4 sibling pairs. The students had very expansive ideas of what it meant to feel safe. That it should be secure in public spaces, secure at home, safety in their minds, in their bodies, and safety that should be equitable. One student said it should be afforded to everyone, not just one group of people. And you can see in their own words here what was captured on the flip charts. They felt that feeling safe and being safe also meant being able to be authentic, to be myself, to just be myself. And that all boundaries would be respected, especially at school, even emotional boundaries. And one student said, when asked what makes us feel safe, they said, being able to learn. There's students in school who cannot get to the point where they can move their mind to learn because of all of the trauma they're experiencing from this issue specifically. And of course, all of the other things that go on. We're just coming out of a pandemic. I know there's got to be some school parents in here too. It's been a rough go. And students really wanted to hear about building relationships with one another. They wanted opportunities to hang out, like to just be kids. I had one administrator who's there as a trusted adult. And she said at the end of the event, it was so good to see students here together, having fun, laughing, joyful. And as a parent, I said, well, is that really not happening in schools? And she said, no, it is not. It is not. Students wanted us to think about kind and positive behavior and how that could be encouraged by older students to help younger students. We had one student stand up and say, I see these younger students who are so angry. Middle schoolers, elementary schoolers were so angry. And they wanted to help those younger students and an older student. They said, I feel like I can handle this a little bit better than they can, and I would like to help. They saw themselves as mentors to students far, far younger than they were. Students understood safety as both individual and collective, but it wasn't limited to just school. It was communities. It was, we're all in this together kind of an attitude. They saw it as a collective problem, not an individual right to safety. They identified solutions that stretched from financial stability to social media experiences to more mental health services in school. That was a very, very resonating issue across all of these flip charts, and all of the conversations was, we need better mental health care services in school where we feel safe, where we have trusted adults, where we need more trusted adults, where we would like more trusted adults. This was a reframe throughout the entire day. They needed to feel supported, and the subtext is they are not feeling supported. They are not feeling supported in their quest for better mental health. Imagine knowing what you need and people telling you that's what you need and thinking about that's what you need, and you can't get what you need. So they're really trying to churn out solutions of how to get what they need, and they really would like to see more training of more trusted adults so there are more people involved in creating that kind of environment that is supportive for their mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, existential health. Yeah, you can go ahead and forward. So you can go ahead and scroll through some of the, there's more pictures and people, actually, these are mostly this is artwork, but these are more flip charts. You can see how, again, people talking about, is it comfortable am I even comfortable in school? Like, what does that mean to feel safe? What does it mean in all of these different contexts? One student drew a picture, and I'm not sure if it's coming up, I think. Ms. Schreiber, just go ahead. These are more, it was Mother's Day, it was around Mother's Day, or it just happened, and here's another picture. So there's a photo on the left, and it was interesting, two students drew schools. And 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 I asked one of the students, well, could you explain to me what's happening here with this picture? And I was concerned that the picture was going to be showing people being shot outside school. That wasn't what he was drawing. He said, these are students happily going to school and being in school. He said, I loved being in school. He was so joyful when he was talking about this drawing. I was so happy there. I could be with my friends. It was a place where I could learn and feel safe. Learn and feel safe. I want it to be like that again. All of the drawings were hopeful, joyful, vibrant. And it was striking to me that despite all of the grief and frustration and anger and sadness and deep trauma, this is what emerged all throughout the day, these beautiful drawings and paintings and imagination about what it could be like. What it could be like. So after the first round, kids, students would walk around. We had food. We had, I don't know if any of you feed teenagers, but there's a lot of food, and we fed them all throughout the day. And I'm really grateful to both Dr. Wanda Boone Together for Resilient Youth and DPS for providing that food. So we went through the second lightning round. Go ahead and Ms. Schreiber, go ahead and move through that one. The second lightning round was more about, I think maybe you're too. Well, go ahead. That doesn't matter. Lightning round 2 was, what do we mean when we talk about guns and safety? So we really wanted to get into the gun part. What is it? What are students thinking about? What are young people thinking about? We talk about gun safety now. We weren't really sure that really was well understood or how it was understood by our students. And they had really interesting perspectives. I will tell you one thing, these young people have been paying attention to laws. They've been paying attention to policies. They all knew that the General Assembly had just passed a law allowing guns to be purchased without a permit. They all knew it. The parents who attended, we had 3 parents who attended that day. They knew it. They're all paying attention, whether it's social media or news, whatever their information input is. But they had a desire to advocate for better laws. They had a desire to talk to leaders at the state level. I think they've been getting that message over time that some of this really has to be dealt with at the state level. I am sure that some of these students are going to either run for office or be an advocate or really energized around changing the policies that were impacting their lives. Some wanted more education around guns and what the consequences are. And several you'd say, well, I think a lot of young people, they pick up the gun, they don't really understand the consequences of what's going to happen if they pull the trigger. They were talking about philosophical questions around the creation of gun culture. And they were really getting in deep, why they may be drawn to using guns, young people. They would cite influences like music and social media and whether guns and safety were oppositional. Some agreed with guns as useful for self-protection, but mentioned the need for a permit. They were really on about the permit. Youth want the conversation around guns and safety to be respectful and free from stereotyping. I love that part because as someone who's been in this for over 20 years now total, those conversations have gotten less and less respectful in the adult world. And they're not having that. They're not having that. So by the end of the second lightning round, we asked people after lunch to just all gather together and start talking about what they'd like to see right now. What do they need right now? What do they need in the summertime? And what do they need in the fall before they come back and set foot into their school? And overwhelmingly all across the board in all of those areas, more mental wellness days. And this was also repeated by students at the listening session conducted by Board of Education Director Giovanni Lewis just a couple of weeks prior. Students wanted to know how can they get more mental wellness days? And there was a suggestion actually in that event that those mental wellness days happen at school. They didn't want to just hang out at home on their computer, do whatever they wanted. They didn't want a day off. They wanted school to be their mental health care facility for a day. And that was, again, identified as an immediate need, summer need, and a fall need. They were all trying to figure out how to keep this conversation going. They feel there is momentum around it. But they knew the summer was coming, so they're trying to gather amongst themselves, stay connected together to one another. So that was one of their priorities, so that they could continue to advocate for themselves. They are advocating and advocating and advocating and advocating. Some of these students, this event took place just as the AP exams were starting. So there were students who were there who were, and then right following that are the next exams. So these students took time out of their incredibly busy schedules as students to sit and talk with one another. Some students requested metal detectors. Others wanted to see more surveillance of areas around the schools. Almost every table mentioned the need for more trusted adults. More than anything, they wanted to see more trusted adults who were trained in mental health care. Mentorship was another thing on their minds. They really wanted to have more mentorship. And they wanted to be able to feel like their advocacy, their requests, even if they were agreed on by people they were approaching, that they were heard, that they were understood and heard. And it's not enough for them to be heard. It's really critical for them to feel that they are heard. And so actions kind of need to be connected with their recommendations. You may not agree with them, but how do you continue that conversation? And that was another piece that they really wanted to see. Keep talking. Please keep talking. Please don't silence us. Please help us express our grief. By the end of the afternoon, and people had told their stories throughout the entire day. We had several students at the end of the day, however, who, and if you want to go ahead and advance, Ms. Schreiber, thanks, who really spoke specifically about the student who was killed at Hillside High School and what it was like to be in the classroom with the sibling of that child and watching what that sibling was going through with no resources in the moment to help that child through. And these were emotional testimonies from two students who themselves were having a very hard time explaining how they felt. The student who, at the end of the day, who did, he was quiet most of the time, wasn't sure that he was gonna speak up at all, but he was our final speaker. And he was just wondering why, not only why was this happening, but why didn't people care? He said, quote, "Can you imagine how a mother feels when her child has been murdered?" He was thinking about the mother. And his classmate had been killed. They continue to reflect the collective community trauma that we all continue to experience in Durham. But they understood that we needed to heal. We needed to heal, and that was another part, a central part of this convening. And I wanted to leave you with the words of one of the students who wrote themselves a letter to the future. Here you can see the students talking and figuring out which ideas were most important to them. To the future from Katie. One day your world is going to be amazing. However, today is not the day. Keep fighting the way I'm fighting. I am going to keep fighting for you, and you keep fighting for me. You are worth everything that comes your way. Never stop moving forward. You have come so far, and you can go so much further. Love the past. I would love to see a convening when we are able to bring everybody together again of city and county leaders students who participated in all of the events that were held from March through May. And really talk about what emerged from those meetings, having students there, supporting organizations, leaders. They do want to be and feel heard, and I think that would be a good, also sort of a synopsis of how the last few months have been. And finally, I want to request the possibility for paying our students at the level that we requested for them to participate in this convening.
That's right.
And we were partially funded by the city. I'm here to request that, whether it's city, county, both, or whomever, that we fully fund what we requested. Our students to be paid. And I'm happy to talk about that.
Dr. Haldeman, if you could explain that a little bit further, what were they? What were the students told that they would receive, what they actually received, and what we need to do to make up for that difference?
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Thank you, Mayor. We requested $25 an hour. These are student consultants. We are centering their expertise in this event, and so we wanted to pay them for their expertise. They were given $25 for the day. Dr. Wanda Boone of Together for Resilient Youth supplemented it with a $50 donation per student. So that brings it up to $75 per student thus far. The event ran from 9 to, it's advertised as 9 to 3. They stayed from 9 till 4. So that's 7 hours. So we're still short, I think, about 4 hours.
So that's $100,
Correct.
Times 20.
Times 20 students.
$2,000.
Correct. Thank you.
Yes.
Quick follow-up to the mayor's question. You did request that it was approved. Who approved it? If you don't mind me asking.
We requested it through the Community Safety and Wellness Task Force, and they supported it, and I sent it to the city manager's office, and that was not approved. The $25 per hour was not approved. The $25 per day was approved.
I got some slang.
Any other questions for Dr. Haldeman? Commissioner Jacobs, Commissioner Long, and Chair Howard.
Thank you so much for this presentation. Really appreciate it, and appreciated hearing through you what the students have shared. We had a recent really great meeting, a joint meeting with the school board and the Board of County Commissioners. The whole conversation for 2 hours was around mental health and what the schools are doing, what we're doing, the investments being made. We also had a presentation from Durham Public Schools and their whole schools initiative. And I hope that you all will connect with them if you haven't yet, because there's also funding opportunities through the whole schools. And a lot of the recommendations and the requests that students, I took some notes from what you said, are things that also came up in our conversation with the Durham Public Schools and the whole schools representatives. They are going to be doing a lot of their work is focused on training staff, training students, student ambassadors, paying students to be ambassadors. So, we can often in Durham work like this a lot of times. Great things are happening, but it's like, okay, so let's connect. So I just want to encourage you all to connect with that, because it really tremendous amount of overlap. Also, there's the source of funding right there, because they also provide, they're doing grants for this summer that they asked for schools and teachers to apply for around mental health. And this is certainly what the heart of what you are, is, what you shared with us. So thank you so much. Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you so much, Kaaren, and your entire team of folks who've been doing this work. I can see how personal it is also for you. So thank you so much for bringing your heart to this work. And I think this conversation is very timely, and also the fact that I know for at least our Board of County Commissioners, this has been the 5th time we've heard about, what our youth need just this year alone, and we're only halfway through the year. We had the Durham Youth Votes had a gathering where mental health and services within the schools is the main topic. We had the vigil organized by school board member Giovanni Lewis. We had our ACEs coordinator presentation at the county. We've had this presentation, and we met at Jordan High School with the student council leaders, and the main conversation of the student council leaders was mental health resources. And most of the times it was not even the students speaking for themselves, but for their classmates who haven't had the opportunity and spaces to come and speak up for themselves. And so this is a lot of weight that the students are carrying, trying to make it by through their classes, and then also trying to support their classmates. I'm really interested also to see, like, when you're talking about mental health and with the students, has the conversation of grief come up, like of what resources are available for students dealing with grief, and not just grief and like losing someone, but the grief of having to deal with the events in their communities, the grief of losing their childhood, of having to deal with these issues?
Absolutely. It was expressed, certainly, but it was also, we heard from students saying they felt like they should have been able to turn to someone at school for guidance around how to grieve. As humans, we learn from adults how to grieve. I mean, as young people, we have communities across culturally, we have different rituals and ways that everyone handles grief. We all handle grief differently. But I think they are missing an opportunity to have that kind of attention and healing in a place where they can feel it's safe, and also that it's appropriate. Like that was their connection, that the school is the place where they would like to see that happen. And maybe they're members also of faith communities or other organizations, but they seem to feel that the school was the place where they thought they should be receiving more assistance in helping them to grieve. And though there was a sense that they were not being helped.
That's definitely something that we heard, like when you're meeting with the Jordan High School students, a lot of them raised the concern, like they are really grateful and appreciate like the support of guidance counselors with college preparedness and college readiness. But also they feel like, not all students in high school are planning to go to college, and they aren't in the mental space to even be thinking about and planning for college. And they would like to see more mental health resources in addition to those college counselors. But that was something that they really brought up specifically, was saying, like, we have guidance counselor meetings, but it's just to talk about college. It's not to talk about anything that we're dealing with. And for a lot of students, they don't have the resources once they get home. And there also may be family stigmas that exist, that
That's right.
school is the safest space. So I hope, and I feel like there's a lot of action steps that are presented to us here and through the other conversations that we've had, that we can start working on the commission side, especially with public health, to looking at more investment within our public schools of, mental health care coordinators and service providers.
Well, I think that their perception is, and their desire is for adults across, whoever wants to be trained, to be trained. It doesn't have to be a counselor specifically. You don't have to be a licensed clinical social worker in their mind's eye. You need to be a trusted adult who can help them grieve, who can listen, who can let them pour out all of the ways that they've been experiencing what's happening around them. And of course, it's gun violence, but it's layered on top of everything else. Just coming out of COVID and with the families who've lost loved ones to that disease, trying to get themselves back on track academic. They've got a million things, just as you pointed out, Commissioner Alon. They are just trying to hold it all together, and they're carrying the burden of their classmates as well. And we had a student who was carrying the burden of the younger children, feeling that they were the mental health care professionals for the younger children. I mean, that's how they saw it, like we can help them. So it doesn't have to be a licensed person. It doesn't have to be an academic. It doesn't have to be anyone who went to school for it. Even their fifth grade teacher, who's their fifth grade teacher, could be trained in somehow to help students get through the grief and heal. Not that we ever get through it, but to try to heal.
No,
Can I just make one more comment? I'd also be interested really in, with the youth home that, the new youth home that's being built, of how we can also integrate these conversations with, the youth that are gonna be, in this space, because these are individuals that are directly impacted every single day by, gun violence, and trying to make sure that we don't leave them behind also, because for the restorative work that is gonna be needed to help them, come back into society, we need to have these conversations with them.
absolutely. Thanks, Commissioner. Kaaren, thank you for this conversation. I'm kind of all over the place right now, but what I want to say is one of the things, we talk about adults. Most adults don't know how to be with grief. They don't know how to be in that space of pain and grief. They don't give themselves the time to be with it, and they can't be with somebody else that's in that space. They want to make it be okay. Saying things like, God doesn't give you any more than you can handle. Is such a lame thing to say to someone. If you have no training and no compassion, it is hard to be in that space with someone when you're dealing with the grief and the pain. And when you're a child, it's even doubly bad. When I think about our community, I think about students being angry, adults are angry. So I think about a young man that we just lost recently, Conan Morgan, and the compassion and the care that he showed for people. To honor someone such as that, for as adults to take on his presence, to show care and appreciation for people. This is all people really want, is they want people to be respectful and caring. And when mental health is a need, it's definitely a need there. But so much of what our young people are asking for is they're asking for adults to be caring, to listen.
Yeah.
You don't have to talk all the time, you can listen. My God. Just stop talking. We feel like we have the answers, so we don't even listen to young people talk. So how do you teach an adult to listen? I don't have the answer to that one. But,
It can be done. It can be
It
done.
can be done?
I am sure it can be done.
Okay, if you say so. The other thing is, the other thing about community mental health, it's a huge conversation we're talking about. The American Rescue Funds we're putting toward from the county, we're putting towards mental health. And then there's another conversation about a community health, mental health hub that we've been talking about for quite some time, that the mayor and I and with the county that we've been trying to get together, and that is having mental health hubs in the community where individuals don't have to, they can go right in their community to get help. Because I truly believe there's something to be said when you have connections in the community with adults that can listen, whether they have a degree in mental health and certification or not. You don't have to be a professor to be able to listen to someone and that person to leave you feeling heard. So, I'm gonna stop talking.
Yes. I will say.
I'm gonna stop talking. This is a little bit of something that I know. Back to that $2,000. Now, we're just again pontificate about a whole bunch of stuff. This ain't my meeting. Y'all should have brought me up here because this ain't my meeting. I ain't worried about, offending nobody. I was at work. But there's a couple of themes that keep popping up. Now, this is the joint city county planning meeting. So y'all come to us with stuff and we supposed to be solution oriented. Can't make no decisions in here, we got a little bit of a quorum. But I would add on to those two meetings that Commissioner Long talked about, or the two that the sheriff did. And they were the three school safety summit.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you, I've seen them parents and them children in there, and I didn't feel like they were heard. I actually saw some elected officials. I'm gonna not talk to them. I'm not gonna call their names out. I'm gonna wait till they on the ballot. I'm gonna make punch them real hard. But for me, this idea of, kids want to go in and learn kind of sort of unobstructed and they're not getting what they need. I need the community to hear this really, really clear. I could pay a social worker $100,000. That person is not a trauma specialist. These kids are dealing with trauma. If something happens at Duke Hospital, if something happens at my state job, they're bringing in a team. And that team is gonna sit in there for months. These kids see shootings every day, and we don't have trauma specialists going in. So when people came to this board last year and said, we need social workers, and they kicked and screamed about it, and they said, well, y'all need to pay them $40,000. The market doesn't say that. We brought it $65,000, $67,000. We still couldn't hire everybody, still haven't hired everybody, because the market demands more than that. So I'm trying to articulate that this is not a money issue, we got a body issue. Yes. I don't have enough teachers coming out of the School of Education at Central, at NCCU, at Duke. God bless your son, he start next month in the School of Education at Duke. I don't know where we're gonna throw him. We're gonna throw him somewhere with him. But he's gonna be here for 2 years. But we don't have enough people coming out the pipeline. So I want to go back to something that Kaaren said. We need more adults in the school system. That's point blank period. You want less SROs? I need more of y'all. Like, that's the only way this thing is gonna work. And I'm not gonna put the pressure on a teacher who is already a nurse, who is already a nurse trying to feed some of these babies that can't feed, trying to be the reimbursed, and now this person has to be a psychotherapist, they gotta be a security guard, they gotta be all these things. Like, it has to come back on y'all. It has to come, and I'm saying y'all because every woman I've seen up here has been in the school systems. I've seen everybody up here volunteer, and we're gonna continue to do that, but we need some of that on y'all. So I'm gonna just push that back. So I don't know, I'm looking, Joanne, I see you nodding affirmatively. I'm gonna put this on staff, I'm gonna put on everybody, I'm gonna put on Tammy. I forgot the new guy's name, Dr. Sowell. I want a team together to work with the school board because they're not here to defend themselves. No, I wish they were. They're not here to defend themselves, and they do great work. They do great work. I only push at people that I know that can do better. So they do really good work. But what I want to see, if you're this training, to your point, I hope everybody heard what Kaaren said. You don't have to be a licensed clinical social worker. You don't have to be. How will we communicate to parents that you can come in? Because I think another issue we have is people just don't know where they fit in, and we feel ill-equipped. I do agree with the chair sometimes, parents, people don't want to listen. I would argue it's not necessarily because they don't want to talk. They don't want to hear what they about to hear. When we were sitting at Jordan, I can tell y'all, all this hair ain't mine. The hair that's under here got a couple more gray hairs. I was surprised at what the kid said to me. And I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, well, can we get help? And somebody said, well, no, Commissioner Burns, a kid every day says they want to commit suicide. I mean, we got the hotline, but if I had to report it to the hotline, I had to do it every day. Messed up my whole day. And that was just what the other week. I don't know how to wrap my head around the fact that the kid that might be student body president is saying, Commissioner Burns, every day somebody wants to kill themselves in here. That was not my first thought. You bullied me, I bullied you back. I was never an option. But these children, they themselves are an option. And so I just say, I hope that we can get a team together and work with the school board to get more parents in schools, because we cannot put this on the teachers and the SROs. We've been talking about it, we've been saying it. And the fact that, and I want to echo something else that you pointed out there, and I'm still getting back to my $2,000. You said that the kids want their health and wellness day. I've been to 3 schools. The kids actually do want that mental health day. And to your point, all the kids say they want it in the school. They don't even want to be at home. Right. Like, so they're not even saying, I don't want to be here, which I thought what they meant to, again, I was quiet enough to listen and say, we just want to not have to do no work. We still want to be here because school is also safer than home, and that's saying something.
Yes.
And last but not least, it is $2,000. Now, y'all, we spend that on ink pens and Post-its, so I hope that before we leave out of this room, somebody somewhere can come up with $1,000, and somebody else can come up with $1,000. And I know I ain't been to the Safety and Wellness Task Force meeting as a liaison last month, but I'm looking at my two folks that I know got $1 million over in their coffers, and I'm trying to figure out why 2,000 couldn't have came from y'all. But I ain't putting no pressure on nobody today. I'm just saying, I'm gonna do it when this meeting over. And Kaaren, were you fairly compensated? Tell the truth, Michelle, the devil, yes or no?
No,
That's all I needed to know. We'll talk about that too. Y'all, I cannot be a student consultant. I'm not in school, but I ain't got no problem paying a kid $25 to do it.
yes, same here, yeah. Thanks, Commissioner.
Dr. Haldeman, I thank you for you and Dr. Boone's work that day. That was an eye-opening experience for me visiting those young people. I went there that morning. I did not really want them to know that the mayor was in. I just kind of wanted to see them in their element to do, their thing. Dr. Cason was there, Dr. Bello, just a number of people were there. And we kind of sat back to just kind of watch. Their pain was palatable to me. I think one of the most shocking things, because you kind of hear it a lot of times on TV or people are talking about it, but when you have a young person that says, when they go to school in the morning and they walk through the door, they ask themselves, what if somebody shows up with a gun today and starts shooting? And that's how they started the morning. I don't start my morning coming into the city hall thinking like that. I don't even go to a grocery store thinking like that. There's something to be said about a society, and all of us need to be indicted on that. When a kid, I think about my high school experience at Hillside, which was one of the greatest experiences that I have had in my life, and how it's so different from them, for what they're experiencing, that they walk into a school every day and they wonder if somebody's gonna show up and shoot them. And they've been a part of that for a long time. But
Mayor, I would add to that, parents feel the same way.
Yeah.
That we send our child, what kind of society has a mother send their child out the front door? And of course, there's communities where you can't send your child out the front door, period. But send them to school, not knowing if they come home. That's what I do every day. I know what every parent across this country does every day.
in my naivety, I also raised the question with them. Okay, well, what about the communication that's going out when the kids within themselves know that somebody's there with a gun or with a weapon? Right. And how do you address that? And most of them, their response was that we don't, because snitching is real.
Yeah.
There are real consequences for that. There are real consequences for young people alerting the adults in those spaces that something is about to go down. And we don't think about that. What does that mean for an individual 13, 14, 15-year-old when they know their classmate or somebody may have a weapon and they don't have any way to tell it without thinking that they're endangering their own lives? We need to continue more of this. I don't know that there's anything more important than making sure, one, that these young people, I do think that we need to fairly compensate them for what they did that day. We need to make that right, because that sends another bad message to them if we don't. And also that we need to continue to support more of these things and be willing, like you said, to come in and listen to it. Because it's one thing for adults to have that exchange with each other about that. It's a whole nother experience when young people tell you that. And they were ready. It was amazing that they were speaking about these really heavy issues, but they were very able to articulate their pain, their grief, and their hope. I watched them sing songs with karaoke. And the hope that they have that this could be a better world for you and me. They saying that, we out of world. Most of them don't even remember when we out. Okay. They don't have no idea. They weren't even born. But they're up there singing, we are the world and man in the mirror and just doing things to kind of help themselves deal with this heavy issue and provide solutions. So I commend you for this. We need to do it more. And we need to fairly compensate them for being the experts in the room when it comes to this. Chair.
I want to say one more thing. And our young people, as they grow up and go to college, it doesn't stop. Our world has created such an environment here that they're not even safe in college. As parents, we send our kids off to college. They may come back in a body bag.
Yes.
That's how deadly this conversation is right now. And our lawyers, our lawmakers are making it easier for folks to get guns and be able to have you bring your child back home in a body.
Yes.
So the question is, where do we stand in the issue around that conversation? How are we protecting our young people from those guns? If we have guns, how are we protecting our kids from them? Are we keeping them safe so that the kids are safe?
Right.
That's a question we all have to ask ourselves that own guns.
That's right.
So when we talk about its mental health, it's the endangerment of guns, it is about children, adults keeping kids safe.
Yes.
So that they can grow up and create a different world than we have today. So this is a lot of conversation here. So,
Yes, thank you, Chair.
I just want to follow up on what Commissioner Howerton just said related to gun safety, because there aren't a lot of things that we seem to be able to have however right now in with gun laws, but gun safety is something we know that we are failing miserably on in Durham, and that gun owners can do something about. Maybe Commissioner Burns will remember better than me the data, but something like 800 guns were taken out of unlocked cars last year in Durham. And those guns end up in the hands of young people. So if, you know, we do have a wonderful gun safety team in Durham County Public Health. We funded them in our budget last night to launch a campaign. They want to do a big community-wide awareness campaign about gun safety. They provide gun locks right now, but we know that there's a need for safes. Gun safes, they're expensive, and I don't know if part of their campaign will be around the safes as well. Yep, Joanne's shaking her head. So we're going to provide gun safes for people who can't afford them, but people literally need to lock their cars and store their guns safely in their homes and their cars. That is something that people can do. Yes, yes.
Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Haldeman and Dr. Boone, for what you've done and will continue to do. I think one of the things that struck me about that was that one of the teachers, I think that was there, said something about that being a safe space for those young people to come and mingle on a Saturday. And that's a other challenge I put out there for the community. Our teens, where did they go? That's safe for them to congregate and be teenagers. We now call for, I just put that down there for you all to ponder. Where do they go? So we'll turn now to our co-chairs of our Safety and Wellness Task Force, Marcia, Owens, and Xavier, Cason. Glad you all are here this morning.
Good morning. It's great to be here with you. While Marcia's passing out some information, she's passing out information on the prescription for repair, which is one of our recommendations that we made. I don't know how many months ago now, as well as a one-pager for you, just to save time of the people we've listened to in the community and the recommendations that you could expect to see coming forward when this final report is done. It's a heaviness right now. Those who know me, I'm a joyful person, but
That's correct.
for 2 years, we've been in this hard work. Really appreciate Dr. Oliver's ending that presentation with that letter of joy. Because that's where I live, but it has gotten hard. So I just wanted to mention that for 2 years, we've been doing this volunteer work. This is a very unique task force, as you know. It's the only one that was commissioned by the Board of Education and the Board of County Commissioners and the City Council. I was on the Board of Education at the time, and it was a very hopeful thing to vote for the bylaws that created this task force, never thinking I'd ever be involved in it personally once it was formed. One of the most, that bylaws were kind of, I recall very clearly, it was difficult for the three boards to communicate and bring forth and update the bylaws back and forth. But one of the things that it was brought to my attention this weekend that we may be out of order as far as the vote we took in February to extend the task force beyond the 2 years. There are a couple of things that are very important to us that we hear from our residents, that we thoroughly research what we've heard, analyze it, and then that we go back to our residents, remember, check to say, did what we're saying we heard actually match what you're saying and what you want us to hear? 2 years has not been enough time for that. It took a while to get the research assistants. They're working hard really now. But I do want to hopefully allay your concerns about that vote that we took in February to extend beyond the 2 years. We thought it was very wise that the three elected bodies back in 2018, 19, somewhere in there, put Article 7 into our bylaws. If it's okay for me to read that, and we can move on to our report from Asman. Article 7 of the bylaws for the Community Safety Wellness Task Force termination. It is anticipated that the task force shall complete its mission within 24 months of the initial appointment of its members. However, this work is critically important and should be completed with due care and all needed time and attention. In light of that, the task force may bring forward short-term actions as appropriate. However, if at the end of 24 months, the task force has not fully completed its work, the task force may by 2/3 vote of the membership add 6 months to its period of work. So we thought it was very wise that the three elected bodies back in 2018, 19 baked this in from the front, knowing how difficult and critical this work would be. So hopefully that allays any fears about whether we are actually legally operating at this time. Because the 24 months ended in April. So we voted to go up to 6 months, which is October. We won't need that much time, but we do want to make sure that once the final report is completed, that we get a chance to go back to our community and make that work.
Just a quick question. So you said it's in the bylaws that you make that decision without consulting the boards, both boards. I understand that the city was consulted, someone in the city was consulted, but the county was not notified at all.
Again, my understanding is when we, as three boards, created the bylaws and voted, that vote included the extension, the ability to extend. We do have liaisons, and I did ask the city clerk when that time came to, once we had made the vote, I made sure that the city clerk was aware of it and asked what more needed to be done. And she asked, are there liaisons on the board? The answer was on the task force, and we do have liaisons from all three boards on that. And that vote was taken in February.
Okay, so the county commissioners wasn't aware, because I believe from the chair's perspective, we were waiting for you to let us know when we would be getting a report. And we don't have any idea when that's going to be happening. Can you just kind of clarify that for us?
Yes, on our current timeline, we're asking all the roundtables that are bringing recommendations to complete those June and July as much as possible, giving us time to vote on them. And so in August, September, our research assistants are helping us actually write the report. And so by the end of September, we expect to have the report ready to distribute amongst our residents to do the member checking.
Okay, that gives us some timeline. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that, yeah.
Asmin?
Yeah, so thank you for having us. I do want to say that as you look at this, we did just a brief summary of what we're doing for you all, and you'll see a lot of listening sessions. And I just want to reiterate what's been said is that the overwhelming response that we're hearing from folks all over Durham. When we ask what needs to be done to make things as right as possible, is to take care of the children. So you are on it. And I'm just so happy, I'm so delighted and honored to introduce you to Asmin Johnson. She is the coordinator for prescriptions for repair. We want to thank the city from the bottom of my heart for funding this with the Duke Institute for Health Innovations. And it's an extraordinary endeavor, and I'm just delighted to share the pilot program with you. Here's our director and coordinator, Asmin Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here to share. I won't take long, probably 5 to 7 minutes. Just to share about the packet that's in front of you, prescriptions for repair, just a 1-year pilot right now, a collaboration with Duke, and that's several different pieces of Duke, but definitely Duke Health, Duke Institute for Health Innovation, NCCU is on the project, as well as Restorative Justice Durham, which I'm a co-leader for that with Marcia and others. We have circles. Everything we do in restorative justice is in circles, and therefore the heart of prescription for repair is also in circle practice, which is an indigenous practice, but is based in community and common core values. So in your packet, you'll see that we asked 4 core questions. They're the same questions that we ask for restorative justice Durham when we work our cases out of the criminal legal system, which is what happened, what were you thinking and feeling then and now, who was affected and how, and what needs to be done to make things as right as possible. The goal of our pilot is simple, is to listen and learn what survivors of gun violence need to heal. We know that there are gaps in services. We know that there are unmet healing needs, but we will not assume what they are, no matter how many degrees are behind our names or how much money we have to fund it. We will listen, and that's what we do. How do we do it? We do it in circle with community volunteer. Well, they are paid, but I've been a volunteer so long. I use the word volunteer because they are compensated at $25 an hour, and so are our participants, so is myself. But the time and the effort and the energy is based out of a heart for community. And most of our facilitators are from Restorative Justice Durham, but we also have facilitators with no experience. We have people that are stay-at-home moms or students, undergraduate students, all the way to licensed clinical professional therapists. And that is the range of our community facilitators. So our core values are respect, and that is for everyone involved with P4R. That is the participants and the facilitators. Acting and interacting with integrity, working in community, and deep listening with compassion. Every single session we have, we name these core values and then invite everyone, that is the 2 facilitators and the participant, to share a value that they bring. One of the interesting findings that I've seen just as a person who's listened to all 42 sessions, and I also serve on teams, the Marcia serves on teams too, is that when it comes time to name a value, some survivors have named that they don't even have value. That's their personal value, not just to even bring a value. And so gently you share with them, well, you're here, you're willing, you're participating, you're contributing, and you're just working them through that. And even that alone brings the respect and the value of human dignity, because violence, all violence, isolates, it fractures, it traumatizes, it rips communities apart, and it rips the individual apart. But gun violence, whether the person was just shot and they have ongoing healing needs, or whether they perish and then their whole family is now stuck in grieving, there are so many long-term effects that all of us could raise our hand in Durham. I know, to say we've been affected by gun violence, but we want to listen to those who have been shot themselves, or they have a family member or a loved one that has perished. We listen. We need 40 survivors. We only have 28. I'm not going in a linear order in your packet, but we have 28 current, 10 have finished their sessions. We've completed 42 sessions. Each survivor gets 4 sessions or up to 4 sessions. Most people take 3. But this centers the wisdom of those most impacted. Kaaren talked about the children. Everyone talks about the children. Everyone, no matter what state they're in, that is our current and that is our future. But they're coming themselves with children too, and having to navigate through still working and living and existing and everything with the lack of trust for their community. So for them to be able to sit and know that they're contributing to the future work, policy, legislation, programs, or whatever for survivors of gun violence is empowering. It gives agency and it fosters the respect that they need. So we have guidelines also in our circle practice, which is to honor the talking piece. We do prompts and we do different grounding things to just put everyone on an equal kind of playing field. The circle is not hierarchical at all. We're coming to value their wisdom, but we're holding space with them. We're sharing of ourselves too. So we honor that talking piece. We listen to understand and not to respond. We're not there to fix, advise, criticize, or pry. We are there to hold space in circle and in community grounded by values to listen and learn what the survivors of gun violence say they need to heal. Lessons can leave the circle, stories cannot. That speaks to confidentiality. Like I always share in my session, we are in the same town. So we're going to respect each other with that confidentiality, but obviously from the research side, from the Duke side, everything is de-identified. Transcripts are uploaded into a secure server at Duke. The research team pumps out the transcripts. Everything is like redacted, but it's deleted. So there is no personal identifying information before the research teams get their hands on it. So it's already de-identified and then they'll pull out their variables. I'm not a researcher, but you have a page in there that talks about the research. And then the last one is to value the wisdom of participants. So that's what we do. We hold listening sessions, usually at the libraries or other private spaces in the city. These are private 2-hour sessions, and participants get up to 4 of those sessions, which is 8 hours. This is a private-public partnership with the City of Durham, Duke Institute for Health Innovation, NCCU, the Safety and Wellness Task Force, Restorative Justice Durham, and other community programs. People all are accepted to do the work and all are encouraged to spread the word. You'll see a pilot timeline, and we are on target with our timeline. And the last thing I just want to share is some takeaways from a coordinator perspective and also a restorative justice worker, a community member. Durham is my hometown, and also as an educator for 15 years. I am blown away by the level of care and support that our facilitators deliver with their deep listening and compassion. And they range, like I said, from everyone from stay-at-home moms to therapists. I am hopeful and excited about this work. I'm encouraged daily because our survivors feel, and Dr. Haldeman said that, the feel is what's important. Doesn't matter really what you say. There's a quote that I use with Urban Hope, which is one of my other nonprofits, that if you come to help me, then you're wasting your time. But if your liberation is bound together with mine, then let us begin. That's Lila Watson quote. She's a very actress. So we are there to hold that space. Okay. And then they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel valued, and they feel respected. And it is a survivor-centered work. And that goes from everything from the scheduling, having the private session to reimbursement for childcare, transportation, Ubers, the whole 9, because we accept the whole person. And that's something I've had to share with my facilitators. When you do community work, you accept the whole person. Hey, gun violence might be what you thought you was looking for, but you got to get everything, because gun violence is devastating as it is. It's just a part of their life. They had a life before, and if they're still living, they have a life after. And there's all kinds of needs, from food, housing, addiction, childcare, food stamp application, everything. And we accept that. And I get that as a coordinator. And then I have a team of different existing community organizations that I rely on daily. And I'm not a clinical social worker, but we have those two. We have 5 therapists. We have 2 licensed clinical social workers from NCCU in the wings. Haven't had to use them yet. And we've been going since 2/28 with our first listening session. And, you know, haven't needed them yet, but they're there because embedded in our program, knowing that we are sitting and holding so much trauma and asking people to open up themselves and to share that deep pain that sometimes is also wrapped in guilt and fear and shame, not just the grief, because of all of life's circumstances. They share with us, so we want to make sure we have what we need to support them. And then the last thing, 3 last things I'll say is that holding a space for listening in the way that we do through our restorative practice allows for a coherent narrative. There have been survivors that said, this is the first time I've heard my story. So as it comes out, as we ask the questions, as we guide them through, and then it relays back, sometimes they are blown away by the immense resilience, brilliance, and depth of their faith, their belief, their family, or whatever. But there is also still a lack of mistrust through every single entity that's also attached with this program. So this program gives us a chance to build in that trust with the community, not just with our words, but with our actions. There are many ripple effects. You'll see that in your packet there. I gave a few quotes kind of mixed in there about just the feeling of being lighter and grounded and the values and everything is wonderful. But the piece I want to leave on is that this is seed time and we will wait to see the harvest. This demands a response. This is not just going to be another report that's going to sit somewhere. I tell our facilitators and our participants, and I'm sharing here with you and anyone that's listening, whatever legislation, policy, organizations, buildings, anything can use the information that we get from this pilot to inform that work. And that is something that we all, if your name was attached to this, if you prayed for it, if you helped out, if you, whatever your contribution was, including our survivors and our facilitators, whatever your part to play is in prescriptions for repair, we all get to sit back and see that 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, and know that we had a part to play. So I encourage all of us to spread the word, to share with your personal connections, because the restorative framework centers one-to-one connection. It's not about me, it's not about any name, it's not about any dollar. It's about community connections. We hold the space for that listening, and we are encouraged daily by this work, and we are empowered, we are empowering, we're giving agency and autonomy and allowing the survivors to be the expert of their own experience and not someone from the outside telling you what you need. You get a chance to speak about what you need. And then that will be compiled together with the other stories to see what we as a community need to heal from gun violence. And thank you for your time. And I'll just open up for any questions, comments, or concerns.
Colleagues. Commissioner Long, Commissioner, Chair Howerton, and I'll look to my left, Commissioner Burns.
Thank you so much. I just have 2 quick comments. One, to your last point that you were raised about, like, you know, whatever organizations, groups, partners are doing this work, wanting to share this data. I appreciate that so much because I think this is not cheap and easy work to be doing. So to be able to share that is really great. I would love, I don't know if our staff or folks in this room already have connections with, you know, the Hayti Reborn project that the city and county are supporting. Their main goal is to try to bring together organizations and groups that are doing like-minded work. I think it would be really great for them to have this for support. And then also I'm wondering what type of integrations and, you know, working have been done with this research and connections with, you know, the other programs that the city and county have set up right now, like with Bowl City United or the Hearts program.
Thank you for that question. So the research itself is being developed right now. So we just have the anecdotal takeaways. But as far as reaching out and trying to connect across many different organizations that's also doing the work, that's something that, you know, we've done and we always invite that space. You know, people are usually enthused and excited about the work, but then when it comes time to actually boots on the ground and doing the work, it falls flat. That's been a disappointment for me. This is a new type of work for me, but I'm gonna go ahead and call that out. Because at the end of the day, it's not just what you say, it is what you do. And we just ask very simply to spread the word, at least that part can get done. But wherever you get in, you fit in. This is a collaborative work. It's just a pilot. So we're kind of building a plane while we fly it. So that invitation has been spread across many big named organizations here in Durham. And I continue to encourage that collaboration. It's a collaborative work. So they can feel free, you know, reach out. My personal contact information is on the flyer. That is my cell number. People know they can call, text, email, and I meet all the time, you know, to figure out how can we move the collaborations forward, because a lot of the work in Durham is so siloed that we really have to find ways to just collaborate, especially if we're doing a common work for our community. So a great question. And when the research does come available, it will be public knowledge. It's supposed to, the Indian pilot timeline says September. And we should have our findings. Our research team is diligently working. We've already started our transcription process to get those findings out, but it will be public. It'll all be made public knowledge. And then you can know how to respond. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much for this presentation and the work that you're leading. It's very powerful. Just to follow up on what Commissioner Long said, I would love if you could actually come back and present the report and the findings to this group. You know, we think about the whole system of care that we have, and our whole, you know, also our crisis response system as well, that needs to be trauma informed. And, you know, we have actually an ACES coordinator within Durham County government who's supposed to be, you know, who's helping us have a more trauma informed approach. We have a community intervention and safety department. And so whatever comes out of this work is going to be really important for just so many different people who are working and touching in this in different ways. I mean, our justice system, I mean, you name it, everybody. So I think this is very exciting, what you all are doing, and this approach that we've never done before. Thank you.
Thank you. And we would like to just say that we did meet, Ethan and I had a great meeting with Director Harris of the new community intervention and support. Yeah, she's wonderful. And encouraged her, gave her flyers and encouraged her to invite the VCU interrupters and case managers to spread the word. Looking forward to referrals, as well as we have just had a great meeting, very in-depth meeting with Brian Smith. And this, we see that the wisdom and knowledge that we are gleaning from these listening sessions will be absolutely what we're gonna mine for the Office of Survivor Care. I mentioned, we also discussed with Director Harris about the Office of Survivor Care, possibly in that department. She is overwhelmed right now, but was supportive of the idea, but needed to defer that responsibility. And so the HEART program is an extraordinary department. And so we are in regular conversation, including just bringing forward, you know, as we go along, for example, the importance of death notifications and how the HEART program is looking at that, working with the police department to do that. Because I think one thing that we all need to really understand is that we are isolated. Only less than 10% of gun violence incidents when someone has been shot non-fatal ends with an arrest. So we are not with one another. So we're treating over 430 gunshot victims at Duke last year. And yet, you know, we have 28 gunshot, you know, victims of survivors. So anyway, I think this is an extraordinary program that I hope you consider even for the schools. It's not expensive. It was $147,000 for all of that, including a lot of research. And so it's using the 2 years in the heart is what asthma teaches, like people say, am I doing this right? No, because we have facilitation reflection circles, and am I doing okay? Am I doing okay? And as Asmund reminds us all you need are 2 ears and a heart. And so I really, really encourage you all to understand that we don't have to be professionals with degrees. I'm hearing you say that, and it is so true. And there's so many people. I'm an older person, and I just encourage also intergenerational community and having facilitators. So I think it has tremendous potential for lots of value for very little investment, monetary investment.
Commissioner Burns?
All right, mine is deal with everything that everybody said, but here come the hard questions. All right. One, so I want to make sure I got survivor defined correctly. So we're not talking about people who are auxiliary to the issue. Survivor is indeed somebody who has been shot.
Been shot and or family member.
I thought so.
Yeah, but that was
So-
outlined on the original.
I didn't say nothing.
I know.
I ain't get you yet. So I do want to be very clear that y'all have space for 40
Yes,
and 28. So some of these people are auxiliary to the issue, some are not. I'm not saying the folks who are auxiliary to the issue should not be heard. Like, I get it. I've stood beside, y'all see these fingers up? I done stood beside more people that's been shot in this. Stood, been in the car. So,
We're speaking of families.
so, right, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying.
Where their
Right.
loved one has been killed.
Right, no, I just, I
Okay.
said, what's the definition?
Well,
Y'all get scared.
well, it's.
Marcia, you don't know where.
Okay.
She good, I ain't gonna hurt her. I love you and I love Xavier, and I know people get scared when I ask questions, they need to be prepared. She be like, you fine, I just wanted to know, so that the public could know, cause this one is hard. When we were trying to get the Safety and Wellness Task Force set up, I think one of the most offensive things that we got, this is before I was on board, they made definitions for each participant, and they actually put in there that we need to find a parent who was the parent of a child who's been shot. One, I didn't think it was fair that they put it on the county commission to find that person respectfully, because my chair was dealing with that. So I don't know who thought that was a good idea. I'm still upset about it. So I know it's hard to recruit these individuals because it was difficult for us to recruit individuals. So I'm asking because I'm asking. I'm not asking because I'm criticizing. All right. Number two, who are you working with at NCCU? You keep defining all the programs that do, but then you say NCCU kind of sort of broadly. So do you know which department are y'all working?
it's the School of Social Work.
Okay, see, this is easy stuff. Y'all get scared from nothing. I got my brown pen out, not my red
Yeah,
one.
and Professor Christopher Solomon.
Yeah, see, Marcia knew what I wanted, thank you.
And Dr. Lorraine Graves.
And
Okay.
exactly.
We have two. Yes, we have two leadership circles. We have a research circle and an operations circle.
Right.
So we have representatives from each entity that's represented on the night's proposal, that's in our program,
Right,
to be a representative of each, on each side,
right.
whatever aligns with their motivation or intent.
Now, I'm okay with research because in order for us to make good public policy decisions, folks have to go out and do research. We kind of hate when people come to us in a vacuum and say, we need this and we don't have it. So I can apply those efforts. One, I can also apply the fact that this is very niche. I think a lot of times we try to work with everything. This is specifically targeting the people that we want to help. Like, we all sit up here and talk about gun violence all day, like preventing it, but we don't think about this other side. So one, I can applaud this again, because I want people to feel safe. What was it? Ronald Reagan famously, like a pop went off after he got shot. And I don't know if y'all remember that he said, they missed me this time. Everybody ain't like Ronald Reagan. A pop go off and I might pass out. Does that make sense? So everybody doesn't have that type of resilience. I only ask, we're gathering research, and I love your quote about, if I am here, what was the quote again? If you're here to help me,
Then you're wasting your time.
I get that, sis, but let me tell you why I got a problem with it a little bit. Like, I love it. Yeah, we need to be in community with everybody. But if I'm listening to somebody and they telling me that they boxing at home, their husband at home, I can listen to that, but I also want to call the domestic violence center. If somebody is telling me that they're hungry at home, I want to call the Interfaith Food Shelter, call Joanne and see if I can give them some food stamps. if somebody tells me they don't have clothes at home. So I do hear you when you say, when you answer Commissioner Long and said, well, there people know about us, they know about us. I don't want us to just be doing research for research sake. And this I'm not trying to sensationalize, that's what they did with Tuskegee. Let's get these brothers some syphilis, and then we're gonna sit here and do research and watch them die. I don't want that to be what's happening also, so I'm not trying to control you, making sure, so right, I think,
Absolutely not.
so
And I
some real-time help is coming.
Oh, well, yes, but not only that, real-time help is here because in our budget, we also had funds already set aside for self-identified survivor needs.
Right.
So
And I
again,
found-
allowing them to be their own expert of their experience, whatever they need, and they're a part of our program, and not just when the listening session's over either. Our pilot runs through September.
Right.
And I get the privilege to be able to connect with them and talk with them and see what they need, follow up with them after their sessions, see how we can connect them, because you're right. If they're in their listening session and they're talking about an X, Y, or Z, then it is our business to also look at that X, Y, Z, because we take the whole person. And so that's something that we already have buffered in, not just financially, but through people who want to connect that already exist in our community. And so, it's been a really, really great collaboration in that regard.
All right, go forth and do good work. I want to be like Commissioner Jacobs and see the report again.
Yes, thank you so much. Appreciate you. And thank you for your questions.
Dr. Harris, thank you for your work. Thank you, Cason and Marcia. Marcia, I've known you for years and you've been doing this work for so long. I don't know how you continue to do it because it is hard work. It is hard work and hard work. And I want to thank you all three for the work that you do. And one of the things that came to mind as you were talking is I remember being at a restorative justice meeting where the members of the family were there and were going through the process. And it was hard. It was hard to hear. It was hard for the families to hear, but a transformation occurred in that conversation and in that space. And it happened from people listening. And what you talked about a lot today is listening. And that made an impact on me that day. Because today we still have that as one of your key areas. It's listening. Thank you.
I too.
And also, because I got to go, we keep throwing around this restorative justice stuff, and I'm kind of, Mayor O'Neill, correct me if I'm wrong, were you not one of the first judges to do a restorative justice case?
Yeah, I was the first in the state to do a felony and probably one of the first, I think, in the state to do a misdemeanor.
The first, so this is a resource.
Oh, yeah.
I know, but I'm saying this because we taking notes, like we sit here, there's so many experts in the room. I remember, was it 2018? I remember when the news broke, so I also want you to know, we sit up here pontificate, but we got an expert that's sitting right here, and that's for everybody else in the room. I just want to give you your flowers and let you know we can continue to lead this work.
Thank you, Commissioner Byrne. But it takes the whole village, and yes, I was the first judge to actually to do that, but there were lots of people, including Marcia and District Attorney Kendra Lynn, who were very instrumental in forming this type of work. And I do believe in this type of work. And I'm so glad to know and look at the synopsis that you all have given us today. As I've looked at it, there are a few places where the government kind of comes in and intervenes, but most of this is community centered, which I think is the basic of restorative justice and in dealing with gun violence, that it is a holistic community approach. So I am looking forward to what you all will be presenting to us from both ends. This is pioneering work. I don't know that it's being done anywhere else. And so I just commend you all for stepping out of the boxes that we normally create in our societies to deal with these issues and centering this work in the community. So thank you all. This is not easy work. It is where the heavy lift has to happen. And so I thank you all for being pioneers in that arena. And we look forward to you all coming back.
Thank you for having
And we don't have a forum today, so we will make sure that we extend you properly. And I do want to also call our city manager to give some comments about the hackathon and the payment issue. And then we'll conclude there.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good morning to all. I am Wanda Page. I'm the Durham City Manager. I will not be before you long, but I did want to bring a little bit of context into the funding. And I don't want to take away from any of the programmatic and the great work that is going on in our community that you just heard. But I did want to bring a little context into the funding for the hackathon that occurred on May the 6th. As has been presented this morning, it was a one-day event that was proposed. It did come through the Community Safety and Wellness Task Force, who submitted it through their liaison of the city. The original budget for that event was $13,000. Let's see here. It was a little over $13,000, $13,475. Part of that did include, supplies, other things that would be needed for an event, as well as consultants and stipends for the youth that would be participating. In the original proposal, there was some in-kind services, it appears, to the tune of a little over $3,000 that probably was going to be provided by the Durham Public Schools based upon what has been presented here this morning. Typically, when we look at a proposal, we look at it in the context of consistency around how we have done other similar events. And we did just that in this case. Recommendations would come from staff on a reasonable, what will be considered consistent for similar events. And we approved $6,000 as the city's contribution toward the event. Could have been looked at differently if it would not have come through the Community Safety and Wellness Task Force, which is really 3 governmental entities together that are supporting events that come before us. So I wanted to stand to make sure that it's very clear that there was approval and the amount of that approval, and respond to any questions that you might have.
No, that is helpful context, and I get that it came through the Safety and Wellness Task Force and it went to y'all. And I get it, it's 3 bodies, so the thought process is, did it come to us? And it would have been 50-50, like 13,000, and we did 686, maybe the school did 1. All of that is helpful for me. And I'm gonna put some pressure back on them too. Here's where I struggle. The public don't know none of this. So when y'all made a poster and sent it out there with an amount on it, the public didn't know that we hadn't approved it and that she hadn't approved it. So now we have set up a situation where folks have unrealistic expectations about what they were gonna get. So it's all our fault. It's not Manager Page's fault. It's everybody's fault, because I'm looking at the poster right here. We put the poster on our county website, we sent it out. We told everybody it was paying $25 an hour. So now we done told the public, this is what we're doing, and we hadn't even gotten approval to do it. So I do hope that we can come up with a way to remedy it, to fix it. And I don't know if the county got to come up with the other 2,000, but I do just want to put out there, a poster was publicly put out there by our bodies and by people in the community, and folks thought that this was where they were going to be compensated. So I do think we can put the burden back on the coordinators. Y'all don't do that no more until y'all don't count your chickens before they hatch, because that puts an unreasonable burden on her. It puts one on her, it puts one on all of us, because I did get some questions about it. But I do hope that we can sit in this space outside of this room and somebody again figure out how we can at least compensate, because Wanda Bloom came up with some of the rest of it. I don't know how it's going to be done, but and then I looked, here's the other reason why I bring it back. Yasmin, is that your name? Asmin, thank you. She actually, in her PowerPoint that she just gave us, has stated, hey, guess what? We also doing $25 an hour. Let me tell you what the problem is. We don't pay people one time, they're gonna come back and say, you know, I ain't paid them kids at one time, I don't think they're gonna pay me. I just don't even wanna start like that kind of mistrust, that public mistrust. I don't want, because again, that's what's in yours. And then if we end up doing something like that, so again, I'm not in leadership, I'm not a chair. That's helpful context. It didn't come to this side, but I do hope that we can figure out a way to remedy it because y'all, it's $2,000.
I do know that, I'm not sure the process of how I think the money from the Safety, Wellness and Task Force, the $1 million that was given, I think as it stands in our budget, it's like, well, where are we? Let me just ask, where are we with that money now, and how can we go back? If we can go back and use some of that for the difference.
So certainly that was an allocation, a couple of years ago. But in terms of actually committing and spending the funding, it is an allocation on the side of city government. So if there's ever a request and you just heard the results of one of those requests that exceeds the authority of the Durham city manager or department head, which, you know, our department heads also have authority for small amounts of funding, then it would come to the Durham City Council because the allocation or the budget was in the Durham City Council's budget. When you heard the prescription for repair proposal, it came to the council because the amount exceeded the authority of the Durham City Manager. You will also see other expenditures that have occurred over the past year and a half plus that have been for research assistance, you know, other kinds of expenses. I don't have the number in front of me, but I did send that as a follow-up to Durham City Council. It included the prescriptions for repair and all of the other expenses that have come through the city's, you know, budgetary process. I believe it's somewhere over 100, maybe $110,000. The funding in the proposed budget, the balance of the $1 million, if you want to consider it that way, it was, you know, it's always been part of, if it goes over multiple years, it's going to be in the fund balance. And so we gave you what had been spent. There is not a balance currently that is reserved in the fund balance for the remaining $1 million. Not remaining million, but the remainder from the $1 million. I think that was a couple of years ago. But what I have said publicly and continue to say, and was represented here, the Safety and Wellness Task Force extended their term into next fiscal year. They have not submitted additional recommendations that have a cost to them. And because we do have a fund balance and we're not, you know, close to the bottom of it, any portion of recommendations that get approved, you know, by the Durham City Council would be given consideration to be funded from, you know, from savings up to that amount.
So it sounds like we have two options. And at this point, one would be to ask the Safety, Wellness and Task Force to give us a updated invoice via Dr. Haldeman, or the county could also pay the other half since the city has paid half, or pay the remaining. Is that what the two options are that are out there? So that's what I heard. So that sounds like a discussion that we'll have amongst ourselves, but because I do think that it would, you know, they would have to submit something to us. We're gonna pass our budget on Monday. County has already passed their budget last night, on Tuesday. So we'll have some further conversations. They passed it last night, right? So both managers are here. I'll ask you all to start their conversation first. I'll put it back. It sounds like there was maybe $2,000 owed to the students. I think Dr. Haldeman if you would submit something via the Community Safety and Wellness Task Force that, and also to our managers, both managers, then we can figure out a path forward on how to make sure that we do that. So thank you.
I do have a request. Please, I'm gonna smack your hands. Please don't do that. Please don't make those decisions without consulting with our manager or with the mayor or with somebody. Cause I don't know who you consulted with, but those decisions were made without any of us knowing anything about it. And it just gets a little bit messy when that happens, because then we gotta back it up. You know?
All right, thank you all for
Yeah,
finding
thank you.
out. It's kind of hard dealing
Yeah.
with city government and county government and board of education government, and then do the actual work that you're supposed to do. There are lots of losing parts of the bureaucracy, especially when money is concerned and
Yep.
all these boards. So probably on this as well, I think your task force was the first task force that was allocated money, as I'm aware of. And so maybe there has to be some protocols and some things put in policies, put in place for you all to have guidance on how you actually access those funds and what that process is. So I put the onus on all of us to kind of do better as we start this kind of pioneering work. It's a little difficult, but we can get it in. So thank you all for coming this morning. We're gonna turn to our Red Cross, who's been sitting here waiting patiently for us. You know, we have some unique things about the American Red Cross that came in to present to me. And we have about, I think they have 10 minutes on the agenda, and then we have 15 minutes from our update from the Museum of Durham History. And so we will try to maintain timeliness on the rest of the agenda. We've gone over a long way over.
Yes, I promise to keep a tight schedule here.
All right, we thank you for coming almost this afternoon.
Yes, I was gonna say my remarks were good morning, but almost good afternoon.
We have some great things happening with the Red Cross that came to present to me maybe about a month ago.
Yes.
But I thought it would be good for the two boards to hear what they are doing and how they may be able to help us internally.
Yes, and we're looking forward to the opportunity to share what we do, and definitely applaud the leaders that we just listened to as far as trying and with their efforts remedy a horrific situation that's going on. And coming from humanitarian service as an organization, this is what we deal with every day as people in their darkest hours. So we appreciate this opportunity.
And this is our executive director, Ms. Laurie.
Yes, and good morning, and my name is Laurie Hughes, and I am the executive director for the Red Cross for the Central North Carolina chapter, located right here in Durham. It is a privilege to be here today, along with my colleague, Sweetly Sanders, who is our chapter's disaster program specialist. Together, we represent the Red Cross, an organization serving our community by preventing and alleviating human suffering in the face of emergencies by mobilizing the power of volunteers and the generosity of donors. Our mission is down the street, across the country, and around the world. As I mentioned, the Red Cross is down the street, and we are serving the Durham community by providing disaster cycle relief services by preparing, responding, and recovering. Home fire campaign. Home fires happen every 8 minutes and claim 7 lives every day. Biomed services. Every 2 seconds, someone needs blood or platelets. I'm sure many of you in this room have either had a life-saving product or know somebody who's had a blood transfusion as well. Services to the armed forces. Each year, the Red Cross provides more than 540,000 services to our service members, veterans, and their families. And we have a VA hospital right here in Durham. International services. The Red Cross works closely with the International Committee of the Red Cross to respond quickly and efficiently to provide humanitarian aid to people around the world. Along with our partners, we provide measles and rubella vaccines. And our training services, which we're going to learn more about later. But they include certification courses in CPR,
AED, first aid, basic life support, babysitting, caregiving, life-saving, lifeguarding, and more. As I mentioned before, the Red Cross responds to a home fire every 8 minutes in the US. And home fires, as I said before, claim 7 lives every day and injure another 30 people. And I repeat that because that number is astounding. But there is a little bit of a remedy, and that is a working smoke alarm. A working smoke alarm can cut the risk of dying by half. And just I want everyone to think about if they replace their batteries. As we are proud to say at the Red Cross that we have a great relationship with the Durham Fire Department. Together through the Sound the Alarm program, we are installing smoke alarms in the Durham area and saving lives. And Sweetly will share more information about this program in a few minutes. Being that we're kind of tight for time, afterwards, if anybody is interested in downloading an app that will provide information for you for upcoming weather problems, I'd be more than happy to share that with you. And Disaster Cycle Services has a prepare, respond, and recover aspect of it. We prepare to prevent and alleviate human suffering. And through that is the home fire campaign, youth preparedness, and community preparedness education programs. And we respond to immediate disaster cause needs. Our response is through a regional response disaster action team, or DAT. We provide mass care and individual disaster care, which again, continuing that conversation includes mental health. We respond and then we recover. And the way we recover is we assist people and the community to return to their pre-disaster state, to connect clients with additional resources in the community and bridge the gap from immediate to long-term recovery. These are the services the Red Cross is delivering down the street right here in Durham. Since January 2022, the Red Cross has dispersed over $240,000 to Durham County residents. We have 137 of your Durham neighbors who are Red Cross volunteers, and we can always use more. The Durham Fire Department has called on us almost 150 times to assist our neighbors in their darkest hours. One of the services we are excited to share with you today is our preparedness program. Sweetly is our expert on these programs, and she will share a little bit about these programs and how you can offer these programs to your staff and your networks. Sweetly.
Thank you. We're almost there. As sure as we live, we will experience one form of disaster at any given time, as you all heard about the gun violence and all of that. Preparedness helps to empower an individual to overcome that disaster even more efficiently. And this is why we are presenting our preparedness program to see how we all can work together, because community preparedness education program is just that, community, preparing the community so that they will be more efficiently prepared to deal with a disaster. We're gonna now talk about our 5 major preparedness programs. Let's go on to our youth program. We have 2 youth programs right now. We have Prepare with Pedro, and we have our Pillar Kids Project. Now, with our Prepare with Pedro, we help little kids from kindergarten to 2nd grade. We are on the floor with them. We are teaching them. We are sharing with them. How do you prepare for a disaster? How do you prepare for a fire? The same thing we do with our older kids from grades 3rd to 5th, even 6th graders. How do you prepare for these things? How do you pack your bags? What do you put in your bags? So we are teaching them all of these things. So not only do they go home and share with their family, but they engage their whole community. I learned this. This is what we do. This is how you prepare. Because there are so many people are not prepared, have no idea how to do it. Now, for our teens and adults, now everything is about hands on the CPR. I'm gonna start with that, hands on the CPR. Do you know that you do not have to do a full CPR to save lives? You can do hands-on CPR and save someone's life. That is how important it is, because we realize it's not everybody want to do mouth to mouth. I know some cases I don't, but I can try to save your life by doing hands-on the CPR. We offer that to teenagers, we offer that to adults. So that is a very unique way to help reach our community and help save lives. Also, our Be Red Cross Ready. I asked in this room, how many of you know what to do when there's a disaster? Okay. How many of you know that you only have 2 minutes to leave your home if there's a home fire? You know, these are the things that is mind-blowing. A lot of people don't know, but we help you prepare for that disaster. Okay, so we have also our Ready Reading. For those of you that have businesses, and just about all of you in here at one time or the other are still currently have businesses. We will help you assess your business needs and say, okay, this is what you need to reach to that level of preparedness, not only for you, but for your employees as well. Making sure that your business is ready to move on for anything, any disaster that may come your way. Right? Now, one of the things that I can honestly say, and we are humble and proud to say, that because of our next thing we're going to talk about, which is our sound the alarm, we are humble and honored to say we have saved 60 lives. 60 lives, just making sure that people are prepared for fires. We have saved 60 lives in North Carolina. And looking also at our sound the alarm, Verit is free. You know, I've been listening to this. I love this commercial where they say free. You know, there's nothing to it, nothing at all. But you know, our sound the alarm, we come into your home, we assess your home. This is how serious we take safety. We'll assess your home. We will check and see how many alarms you need in your home. And we will put it, install it free of charge. So please, we are begging. The community needs to know this. Because as we know, the community don't trust organizations because they always think that there's nothing for free. But we can honestly say there are some things in life that is free, you know, but saving lives are so important. Now, we are unfortunately don't have time to share this beautiful video, but it talks about how the American Red Cross came into a home when there was a disaster and how we were able to make connections throughout to help that family get back on their feet. Not only did we help them to connect with organizations to help restart their life, but because of the disaster, we helped replace every medical device that were in the home. We helped to replace everything pretty much that they had lost because of our connection that we made. So we are there to help. Now, the question is, why are we here today? I'm so glad you asked that question. You know, because we are here, we need you to partner with us and share our message. Share our message that we are here, we are in the community, we are here to help. And if my manager were here today, he would say that on the American Red Cross, we're glad to take your blood, your time, and definitely your money. Because all three of these things are needed to meet our goal and to meet the needs of our neighbors. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for a great condensed presentation. I want to turn it over to our colleagues to see if we have any questions from the other three ladies. Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate your enthusiasm as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, thank you. I'm just wondering, what is your current level of partnership right now? For instance, with, Durham Public Schools, with the programs for children and with Durham County government, like our emergency operations, our emergency services director. I know you help when we do have to set up a shelter. And DSS is the entity that is responsible for shelters, but it seems like you provide so many free, wonderful, CPR and training, a lot of things that people in the community would be really interested in. And I just wondering what the current level of kind of integration or working together is.
So the American Red Cross, like you said, we have this great big, this my way of thinking. We are octopus with all of these different tentacles. So I think within the last 2 months, we recently had a shelter simulation class for the nurses, Durham public nurses. So we're able to go in there and teach them how to not only open a shelter, we're able to talk to them about the things they were experiencing in a shelter. All about preparedness. How do we get you comfortable enough to be able to work with the people within those shelters, to be able to make the right connections, to work together, because we are partners when we go into shelters. We don't always just come over and just take over, but we are partnering with you. So how do we work together? So we did, I think it was like about 5 hours training, and we do more. We come to anyone with the emergency management. I recently had a meeting with Ms. Johnson, who is the planner, and we had a very good lunch because we recently talked about our letter of intent and what is our responsibility, what is our role, and how best can we partner. When it comes to Durham Public School, we want to be more involved in the school because our preparedness program is so important. We need to get the message to the kids because let's be real. Talking to adults, it goes in one ear, it goes in the next because it's hard to get them. But if we can get the kids, if we can get the message to the children will learn, the children will then turn around and teach. And with our Pillar Kids program, what we like is it's called Learn, Teach, and You Share, because they're sharing what they learn. So that is one of our most powerful way of getting the message across. Be prepared for anything, because it empowers you as an individual, it empowers your families, and therefore will impact the whole community.
Thank you for that. And I do hope that you can reach out to the superintendent and about, I agree with you, focusing on elementary school. I used to be an elementary school teacher, remember doing a lot of things in my classroom around fire preparedness and having exit plans and all of that. And so it is really important. So thank you. And just thinking about the community, I don't know if you're connected to any of the PACs, but maybe I think the mayor could help with connecting. That's a really good way to, present at some of the PAC meetings and being able to connect with a lot of people in the community who might like to take advantage of what you have to offer. Thank you.
We are here, like I say, it's free.
If you could help us make that connection with the Durham Public Schools, that would be great if you could connect us with the superintendent.
Thank you. And we will, and that's why I asked you all to come this morning, Ms. Hughes, and so glad that you all were able to stay to the afternoon. When you have a gym in your community, which I think you all are, it doesn't help, but it doesn't hurt to have you all to come and keep us updated on what you all are doing and how we can best partner. So I'll be talking with my colleagues on the council as well as with our executive staff to make sure that we can incorporate what you all are doing within the city government. And I know already you have some partners, as you indicated to me in our meeting.
Yeah.
You're already doing some stuff with the city, but there's always
We can always grow. There's
always
room to grow. We're willing to do that.
So thank you all so much.
Yes, and if you wanted to, as we said,
to provide to your staff if you want us to come in and do a workshop and provide that, hands-on CPR course, we'd be more than happy to do that in the time. So thank you.
Thank you. And I think Commissioner Long has a couple of comments that she wants to make.
I have just a couple of questions, and I know we're short on time, so feel free to respond via email or anything. The first one, I know this falls more on the city side, but just wondering like what partnerships or relationships exist with the American Red Cross and DHA for residents within our public housing community to provide as much training as possible and resources to individuals there. That's one question. And then the second was it would be really cool to see a partnership, I know we talked about like early childhood elementary school, but for the later kids, like in high school and stuff, doing trainings that build a partnership with even Durham Tech, because I think there is a really strong connection possible, like to teach kids about CPR, and some might even be sparked by that interest to learn about healthcare work, that they could seek certifications, EMT certification at Durham Tech, and what type of partnership could be built there.
And we do have partnership in various schools and universities. We have clubs. I know for a fact that we have for Duke, for UNC, who else is around here? Central. We do have clubs established where we come in, we have volunteers, students that rather work and engage in our programs and go out there and spread the message as well. So we are open to partnership and will anyone, any entity willing to work with us to spread the message. Preparedness is all about safety, and that's what we are here for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, one last thing, is it okay to share these our preparedness program, just to make sure you guys don't forget?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We now turn to our last agenda item, not last but not least, and that will be from Executive Director Patrick Mucklow, who will speak to us about an update from the Museum of Durham History.
Thank you. I'm hoping to get everyone just before lunch when they're nice and hangry, so let's say yes to everything. Yeah. Sure. I'll just start by saying thank you for inviting me here today to talk to the County Commission and the City Council. On behalf of our Board of Directors, some of whom are here, and our staff, especially want to thank Commissioner Alam and Councilmember Williams for their board service, and also like to thank Commissioner Chair Howerton for her past board service, and wish you a happy birthday. We appreciate this body's support. It's always great to see you at our exhibit openings and programs. I also want to express our gratitude to the city and county for your ongoing support. The museum, which now stands at $152,000 annually, and your commitment and support for our education program. I'm here today to discuss a request we are making in addition to that ongoing annual support. Included in this request is $568,000 for architectural designs and development phases for a future Museum of Durham History concept at 500 West Main Street. Preparing for this stage of our growth over the next fiscal year is critical for the museum's future. Our process aligns with the cultural roadmap, rail trail mapping, which has the museum at the trailhead, and fulfilling the recommendation of the Racial Equity Task Force for a new history museum. All projects which identify the Museum of Durham History as a key priority. As the museum enters its 10th year of operations, we continue to celebrate our achievements and reflect on our accomplishments this past school year, thanks to the work of Durham Public School staff, our board vice chair, Bettina Umstead, and our staff, especially our Director of Education Programs and Exhibits, Michelle Meadham, who came on board last summer. This past March, we were honored to kick off our 10th year and have Mayor O'Neill speak at our donor appreciation event, where she encountered our dedicated and diverse core of supporters, hearing those calls for a new museum and expressing her support for our mission. That event was held at Durham Arts Council, which, like the museum, is free and open daily to the public. Over the last year, the 150 Faces traveling exhibit went from Rogersburg Middle School to Durham School of the Arts to Sherwood Giffens Middle School. At each location, we work with the educators on site to conduct program assessment, activity development, and work to constantly improve its impact based on real-time feedback. As part of our current exhibit, The Life and Legacy of Floyd B. McKissick Sr., we developed a traveling exhibit called Ellis for Legacy, where elementary school age students learn from the adult McKissick children about what it means to be part of generational legacy. It was first displayed at Durham County Library and then made its way to local elementary schools. This is in addition to the numerous field trips and school groups the museum hosts throughout the year. Most recently, Chair Howerton and Commissioner Alam helped chaperone students from Carrington Middle School on the downtown scavenger hunt, starting from the museum, just as the buses for Glen Elementary School were pulling up for their field trip to the museum. We take on a lot, but we know it's important. I think we all understand and appreciate the museum's cultural impact on the community, but we should also look at our economic impact over the last 10 years and then forecast what it would be in another 10 years with a proper facility. An economic impact report by Discover Durham estimates the museum's added value at over $1 million. This is all with full 3-time staff members operating out of an 1,100 square foot building. If we're able to pull this off, just think of what we are capable of with a real museum and more hands on deck. The museum is a free education resource. It should be considered like a public library when it comes to improving community health. Durham's History Museum should be the shared responsibility of the city and the county and the organization which operates it. So again, we propose the city and county collaborate with the museum to support the construction and ongoing operations. There are existing examples of this partnership, such as the Museum of Life and Science, a county-supported facility on city-owned property. Last August, we presented to the Joint City-County Planning Committee about the need for a new museum of Durham history, one that doesn't buckle or experience diminishing returns if more than 15 school children are in it at once. Since 2013, we have grown this museum and its reach organically. We are now poised to take the next step to keep pace with the growth of Durham and fulfill the increasing public demands asked of a free educational resource. Look at our main library. Out-of-town visitors marvel at the gorgeous multi-purpose facility that does so much more than house books and free computer stations. Durhamites have come to expect that same level of forward-thinking engagement when learning about our history and what shapes our community. And we believe that the best option is to maintain and develop our current location. While we're aware that the museum has been informally discussed publicly and privately as a possible tenant elsewhere, our board of directors has not been formally asked or authorized the museum to participate in a development for 505 West Chapel Hill Street. And with downtown gentrification as a major concern, why displace one of its last remaining free resources, which is accessible to all? We can confidently say to the public that we served after 10 years, we are not a plucky little startup, but an essential education institution with a proven record of success, which is woven in the cultural fabric of Durham. We came away from that meeting last August with a renewed sense of purpose and a clear eye of what we needed to do on our end to help elected officials and staff support this vision. We've worked with Vine's Architecture, who as far back as 2015 recognized the museum's potential and developed program studies to map out how to maximize future space and provide what the public needs. Our next step was to go back to them to estimate the cost of designing and building the facility. And that design phase is what brings us here today. The 2 phases at the top, plus the due diligence to assess 505 West Chapel Hill Street, bring us to the $568,000 reflected in the budget request document. In addition to the architect fees to jumpstart this project, we included other requests for the upcoming fiscal year. 4 digital look beyond the windows exhibit panels to replace the existing static physical panel. As Durham's skyline rapidly changes, digital window panels will allow us to future-proof the exhibits. 2 rotating exhibit gallery touchscreens, one of which houses the popular touchscreen timeline. A 10% salary increase for existing full-time staff and increased part-time weekend management wage from $17 to $20 an hour. and a full-time permanent developed staff position. To date, we have seen a 35% revenue increase, as well as support in marketing, event planning, community engagement, and donor stewardship from a quarter-time role over the last 2 years. Looking ahead, fund development becomes even more important as we ramp up for a major new facility and expanding program opportunities. We are requesting the city and county work with the museum on a path forward before we go the way of the dodo. Delays or lack of funding will set future museum planning back for at least another year and will also affect other projects such as the roadmap, the rail trail, which rely on our input. We're experiencing donor fatigue from our supporters in the private sector. Donors have conveyed to us a perceived lack of investment by local government. If our private sector champions and then the community at large think that this museum is not reclaiming the momentum that we had coming out of Durham 150 and we're not growing, we're going to lose their support. Now is the time, past the time for us to move forward. With downtown's emergence in the last 15 years as a place to live, work, and be entertained, our contributions as one of the very few public free amenities only grows. With thousands of new residents moving to Durham every year, we're vital to letting them know about our unique, complex past and how this has shaped our present and will shape our future. Communicating that story candidly and emphasis on our diversity and commitment to equity helps newcomers and longtime Durhamites alike understand and appreciate what makes Durham special. Our vibrant, forward-looking, and past-appreciating community deserves a history museum that both tells those stories and is worthy of Durham as we enter the second quarter of the 21st century. I appreciate your time and love to hear any questions.
Holly. Commissioner Perkins.
Thank you, Patrick. Well, we actually all had the benefit of this presentation as a part of our budget work session, so I'm basically going to repeat what I said then. But I mean, first off, I would hope, I know we didn't, our budgets were already kind of too far gone, but the requests, which equal 108,000 for, the various things, I really hope that we can refer that to our city and county manager for consideration of the city and the county both sharing the cost of that. I personally support all of those things. I've spent a lot of time at the museum, and yes, things need to be upgraded, and having an increased development officer, as Commissioner Lom said, then will help with the fundraising. And of course, we want to be having fair wages for folks too. So I think those are all reasonable. I apologized at the last meeting, and I'll apologize again. Last September, this issue was on our agenda, and we said that we were going to create a subcommittee, joint city county with elected officials and also staff and museum folks to start, working together on this issue and taking next steps and exploring options. And we didn't do that. So here we are almost a year later. So I know that at that meeting, Commissioner Howerton appointed Commissioner Lom to take the lead on the county side. So I think it's really important that we do get going on this. A lot of things that need to be figured out, because where you are now is city property. So there's a lot of things that need to be explored, and I'm anxious to get going. I personally feel this is very important for Durham in many, many ways. And so I look, and I also volunteered to serve on the committee along with Commissioner Lom, but I hope that we will get going on this process. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Madam Chair, if I may, in regards to the committee, I know at our budget work session, we discussed me being one of the chairs or co-chairs to the committee, but after discussions, and Attorney Andrews can provide further clarification on it, I won't be able to chair that committee due to general statute laws that recently passed. So for that committee, if Wendy is so graciously volunteered to serve on it, if she would be interested in co-chairing it, and if Attorney Andrews wants to provide any clarification.
Madam Mayor, Madam Chair, just to elaborate on what was said. North Carolina has a lot of its past with conflicts of interest. It's General Statute 14-234.3. And it's a law that is basically designed to reduce conflicts of interest and self-dealing, but it's the way it's written, it's interpreted that if you are a board member of a nonprofit and you also are an elected official, you are prevented, some say handicapped, from being able to advocate the creation of contracts and other agreements. And the budgeting process, in a way, is the making or administering of a contract. It's a funding agreement. So the way it's currently worded, we don't have appellate sort of litigation to give us good contours to it, but basically it a little bit handicaps people who are both board members and advocates before an elected body seeking funding. So I had shared that with my board and also with Commissioner Long. We've been having a continuing conversation about that. So I think I want to convey on her behalf and for others as well, because the city deals with this as well. We're trying to navigate the good laws that come from Raleigh. This is one of them. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to deal with now. So thank you.
So thank you, our attorney. He tries to keep us out of trouble. And that will probably go with for Leonardo as well. So, and as stated as well before, and for as the mayor and I putting together a committee, it didn't happen. And what we're asking is, I'm gonna push it back to you, Patrick, to help to organize folks to take that on. We can't, the two of us can't do it all. We need you to step up and help to organize a team of folks that can do the research that you need to make this happen.
Great, we stand by ready to do that.
Okay.
We have worked with Lions Architecture about everything from design phase to construction phase. If I could get recommendations on city staff and county staff of who to bring in from that fold, we have representatives on the museum side that are ready to go.
Okay, we'll have a conversation with our managers and allow them to weigh in on who that needs to be. Because it sounds like right now it cannot be any of the elected folks that are on your board. It has to be someone that not serves on your board. And it shouldn't be, and Commissioner Jacobs has already said that she would be willing to serve. It can't be either one of us. It's
And
yeah.
is it Leo that's on? From the city
Yeah,
side?
Leo is on for the city side and he won't be able to do it either. So, yeah.
So first, let me offer my apologies for, I think I had a conversation with Brenda, our chair, a couple of weeks ago, that where we were supposed to, and I'm like, another thing on my list that I don't. But I'm already giving y'all 80 hours a week. I don't know where I'm supposed. So I apologize for dropping that ball, but we won't hear. A couple of comments. I can't really say who this person will be at this point because I'm the only one from the city, but our city manager is listening and here in between the two of us, we will try to identify appropriate staff as well as an appropriate person from the board to be able to do that. We do pass our budget hopefully on Monday. And so the 108,000, I think that's a little bit over what our city manager would be allowed to do, even if you split it. It's her limit is 50,000. So we're going to have to go back and have some further conversations about how we can do things within the city council, because it's going to have to come as a vote of the council, and so they would need to be brought into this vote up to date. And I don't have a way to say yay or nay at this point, other than we will continue the conversations. I'd also ask, as you can, a lot of times we don't see our colleagues if we're not in this setting. So one of the things that will be helpful, if you could make sure that the other six have an idea of what we're talking about today, from your vantage point, so that they will have the same information that I have as we try to move forward, but our commitment today is that we will put that committee together as soon as we can with the help of the city manager, and we'll get rolling on your request. I do value it. I thank you for putting my sister-in-law's picture on here. As Dee Barnes, who is her father, my fiance, that's their father, Ernie Barnes. So we recognize the value of what you all are doing. I've had a couple of times that I've been over to that museum. It's a valued space here in Durham, and I don't want you to think that you're an afterthought, because you are not that.
Yeah.
You are not that.
And the other things I want to say is that as far as the money that you requested, for the 170, was it 100?
108,000 and 8,007.
Plus the other.
That's a conversation that the managers will have to have. Since we passed our budget already, our county manager is here and they will have a conversation around that, because
Thank God our budget was passed last night. I'm so excited about it.
and, and as the mayor said, we support the museum. It's a process. Whatever we do around tax dollars, the people's money, there's a process.
And is that, if it does not make it into, obviously, the projected budget to be passed by next week, a supplemental budget that happens within the next several months?
I can't tell you, wait and talk to the manager, wait till we talk to the manager. I'm not making any promises today. But yeah, because if we tell you something that is not procedurally correct, then we got to deal with the fallout. So let's just wait, let's wait until we can have a conversation with the manager about how and what.
And is there also consideration about the land at 500 West Main Street and any possibility of our inclusion in a formal proposal at 505 West Chapel Hill and how that property would be?
I'm gonna ask our city manager to kind of speak to that. My understanding of where we are now is that we're about to go into the consulting kind of phase of things. We pretty much kind of restarted where we are with 505. And I believe that we're at the, but I'm gonna let Wanda.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. Is it afternoon yet? Good afternoon. Durham City Manager. At your last action meeting, you did give us authority to go ahead with a request for qualifications for 505 West Chapel Hill Street. For viewing public. There is an existing building that is on that site. And because that building is on that site, it will be included in any requests that we receive from developers with any partners that they have, which they can be, other development partners, nonprofits, low-income housing, experts and providers. So we're looking to our, innovative community to actually bring us proposals to review. But first, we're gonna receive qualifications, and we're in that process right now. So we are not in a position to start working side by side with that process around the building.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. And first, for clarification, so me and Councilmember Williams, we can't lead the committee, but we can serve on it. So we'll help with being members of it. And then, sorry, I know Manager Page sat down, but I'll follow up to that around the land issue. If the RFP that's gone out, it includes the Museum of History in the RFP or no?
It does not.
It does not.
Excuse me, it does not. It is not that specific.
Okay.
We have received guidelines from the council on priorities that they have for the site. We're not very, very specific because we want the best ideas to come forward for the community. So the answer to that is
that the Museum of History is not included in the request for qualifications.
And so, and this will come up from the committee working together, but. So our managers are aware that, you know, a big piece of this conversation, going back to the current location of. The Museum of History is discussing, you know, with a significant investment in building a larger museum on that land. Is figuring out how. Or even modeling what, you know, exists with the Museum of Life and Science, where it's city-owned property and the county funds and supports it. If a similar model or contract can be created so that, you know, 5, 6, whatever years down the road. The Museum of History can keep staying in that property, no matter what elected body maybe.
So I don't think there was a question. But if it was, we would not be making that type of commitment in this meeting.
Yeah, not in this meeting, but I think this is gonna be something that we'll need to be discussing in the committee and like for the managers as they start to have conversations. Figuring out that relationship that's gonna exist between the city and county on the land.
Well, thank you all for your comments today. I would ask that we at least consider that this be a part of our next agenda item, as an agenda item on Tuesday, August 8th. That will be hosted in the County Commissioners Chambers at 9 o'clock. And our chair will be hosting that. At least we can get an update about where the committee is to make sure that we're, you know, we're not dropping the ball again, and we'll be able to give an update and have some chairs in mind and just some conversations about that. I do though have to end with the county has about almost $1 trillion budget. The city is not quite that well. Yeah, 900,000. Isn't that 900 million? A billion? A billion. Y'all got to speak. I'm not quite that well. But don't look at the city to be able to match dollar for dollar. We don't have, they have almost $1 billion budget. They pass a $900 million budget. You're not quite that well.
I will hold you accountable for getting this group together. Don't shove it over here for the man, for me and the mayor to do. I hold you accountable to do that, not us.
But I will receive recommendations on who from the city and county side.
You do the follow-up, not us.
Who do I follow up with now?
You follow up with the city email and the county. Yeah.
Thank you. And then we'll try to identify who on the council will be willing to step into.
Yeah.
But it's been a great meeting. We're all, you know, way beyond what we thought we would be. So we are adjourning this meeting on June the 13th, 2023 at 12:32, and you all have almost $1 billion.
Are we adjourned?
We got. We are there. Yes, and you all take care of food. Yeah, y'all do all that.